Seok-won had orchestrated billion-dollar deals without his hands shaking. He'd put bullets in men's heads without losing sleep. But when the waitress reached across his table and that silver necklace swung into view, the one he carved with a kitchen knife in an orphanage when he was 9, his entire world stopped. Keisha, the girl who sang to him when he cried, the girl who made the orphanage bearable, the girl he was ripped away from when his Mafia family claimed him. He'd searched for her for years before accepting she was gone forever. And here she was, asking if he wanted still or sparkling water, completely unaware that the terrified boy she protected grew up to become Seoul's most feared Mafia boss. She saved him once. Now it was his turn, whether she wanted saving or not. The restaurant was the kind of place where reservations required 3 months' notice and a net worth that could fund a small country. Aurelius occupied the entire top floor of a Manhattan high-rise, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a glittering view of the city that never slept. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across tables draped in Italian linen, where the elite of New York's social scene conducted their carefully orchestrated performances of wealth and power. Seok-won sat at the corner table, the one that offered a view of every entrance and exit. Old habits from a life where survival meant never sitting with his back exposed. His security team occupied strategic positions throughout the restaurant. Young-ho near the elevator, Min-jae by the kitchen entrance, Dae-jung at the bar pretending to nurse an expensive whiskey he wouldn't actually drink. To anyone watching, Seok-won appeared utterly relaxed. His custom Tom Ford suit fit like a second skin, tailored to perfection in Milan last month. His Patek Philippe watch caught the light as he lifted his wine glass, a 1990 Chateau Margaux that cost more than most people's monthly rent. At 32, he'd learned to wear wealth and power like armor, every gesture calculated, every expression controlled. But beneath the polished exterior, his mind worked through the complications of his current New York visit. The meeting with the Vittorio family had gone smoother than expected, and they'd agreed to his terms for expanding his operations into their territory, a partnership that would extend his empire beyond Asia and cement his reputation as more than just another Mafia heir trading on his father's legacy. It was a good deal, a smart deal. The kind of move that separated men who merely inherited power from those who deserved it. His father. The thought of Kang Jae-sung still brought a familiar tightness to Seok-won's chest, though the old man had been dead for 2 years now. Buried with full honors in Seoul, mourned by politicians and criminals alike, celebrated as a titan of industry by those who didn't know, or pretended not to know, the blood that built his empire. Seok-won had stood at that funeral in his perfectly pressed black suit, accepting condolences from men he'd later have killed, and felt nothing. His father had molded him into exactly what he needed, a ruthless heir capable of holding the empire together through cunning and calculated violence. But love? That had died somewhere between the orphanage and the first man Seok-won killed at 16. More water, sir? The voice pulled him from his thoughts. Professional, friendly with just the right amount of deference. Seok-won glanced up with the polite disinterest he'd perfected for service staff, ready to give the slight nod that would send the server away. The words died in his throat. She stood beside his table with a crystal water pitcher, her uniform the standard black and white of Aurelius' staff. Her dark skin glowed warm under the chandelier light, her hair pulled back in a neat bun that emphasized the elegant line of her neck. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the calculated beauty of the women who usually orbited his world. There was something genuine in her features, something real. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped his heart. It was the necklace. Simple silver, worn smooth by years of handling, hanging just above the collar of her uniform. A crude piece of metalwork that looked almost primitive against the luxury surrounding them. Seok-won would recognize it anywhere. He'd made it with his own hands, carving it from a stolen spoon in the orphanage kitchen when he was 9 years old, his fingers bleeding from the effort, determined to create something beautiful for the only person who made that hellhole bearable. The world narrowed to that necklace, swaying slightly as she moved. Every sound in the restaurant faded to white noise. His carefully constructed control cracked, and for one unguarded moment, Seok-won was 9 years old again, small and scared and desperate for any scrap of kindness in a place that had none. "Sir?" Still or sparkling? Her voice. He knew that voice. Older now, shaped by years he hadn't shared, but unmistakable. The same voice that used to sing to him in the dark dormitory when nightmares made him cry, risking punishment from the caretakers who demanded silence after lights out. Seok-won forced his gaze up from the necklace to her face, searching for confirmation of what he already knew. Her eyes met his, warm brown eyes that held polite attention, waiting for his answer with the patience of someone who'd dealt with distracted, wealthy customers before. She didn't recognize him. Of course she didn't. The last time Keisha saw him, he was a scrawny 9-year-old with too long hair and bruises he tried to hide. She'd been 8, all gap-toothed smiles and fierce protectiveness, the only child in that orphanage who showed him kindness instead of cruelty. Now he was a man she'd never recognize. 32 years of violence and power had reshaped everything about him. He'd grown tall and broad, his features hardened by years of calculated ruthlessness. The scared child she knew had been systematically destroyed, rebuilt into something that made grown men fear him. But she was still Keisha. Older, yes. Her features matured into stunning beauty, but unmistakably the girl who'd held his hand during the worst moments of his childhood. "Sir?" She shifted slightly, a hint of concern crossing her face at his silence. Seok-won realized he'd been staring. Years of training in emotional control and one glimpse of a necklace shattered it all. He cleared his throat, reaching for the composure that rarely failed him. "Still water." His voice came out rougher than intended. He modulated his tone, adding the slight formality that characterized his English. "Thank you." Keisha smiled, a professional smile, warm but not overly familiar, and poured water into his glass with practiced ease. The necklace swayed again with her movement, and Seok-won had to force himself not to reach out and touch it, to verify it was real and not some hallucination conjured by too many sleepless nights. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, setting the pitcher aside. "The chef has a special tonight, pan-seared Chilean sea bass with truffle risotto." "No, thank you. This is sufficient." She nodded, that same professional courtesy in her expression, and moved to the next table. Seok-won watched her go, his mind racing through 1,000 thoughts at once. 15 years. He'd searched for her for 15 years. When his father's men first took him from the orphanage, dragged him screaming into a black sedan while the caretakers watched with indifferent eyes, Seok-won's only thought had been getting back to Keisha. She was alone there, without him to protect her from the older kids who liked to pick on the quiet ones, without him to share his meager food when the portions ran short. But his father had other plans. Training, education, molding an heir. Seok-won spent his first year in the Kang compound in a luxury that felt like another kind of prison, tutored in languages and mathematics and business, while his nights filled with questions about the girl he'd left behind. He'd asked about her. Once. His father had looked at him with cold eyes and said, "You're a Kang now. Forget the orphanage. Forget everyone in it. That life is dead." But Seok-won hadn't forgotten. Even as his father taught him to kill, to manipulate, to rule through fear and calculated violence, a part of him held onto the memory of a little girl with kind eyes who made him feel human. When he was 17 and had earned enough trust to access the organization's resources, he'd started searching. Private investigators, contacts in social services, every possible avenue to track down one black girl from a New York orphanage. But the trail had gone cold. The orphanage itself had closed years earlier, its records scattered or destroyed. None of his contacts could find any trace of a Keisha matching his description in the system. Eventually, he'd accepted what his father always said. That part of his life was dead. He'd buried the search along with every other weakness, focusing instead on proving himself worthy of leading the Kang Empire. And he'd succeeded. 2 years ago, when his father died, Seok-won took control of an organization that spanned 3 continents, worth billions in legitimate business, and infinitely more in enterprises the law never touched. He'd convinced himself he'd moved on. That Keisha was just a childhood memory, romanticized by time and trauma into something more significant than it was. But now she was here. Real. Alive. Wearing the necklace he'd made her with bleeding fingers and desperate hope. Across the restaurant, Keisha moved between tables with efficient grace. She laughed at something an elderly woman said, the sound carrying over the ambient music and conversation. That laugh, Seok-won remembered it from the orphanage, bright and genuine even in that terrible place. His phone buzzed. A message from Jung-ho. Everything all right? His security team had noticed his distraction. Of course they had. They were paid to notice everything, to spot any threat or deviation from pattern. Seok-won never lost his composure, never stared at waitstaff, never let anything penetrate the careful control he maintained. He typed back, "Fine, stay alert." But nothing about this was fine. His carefully ordered world had just tilted on its axis, and he was struggling to find his balance. Seok-won lifted his wine glass, forcing himself to take a slow sip while his mind worked through the implications. He'd built his empire on information and control. Every move calculated 3 steps ahead. Every variable accounted for. This was a variable he hadn't planned for. Questions flooded his mind. How had she ended up here, working as a waitress in an elite Manhattan restaurant? What happened to her after the orphanage? Was she happy? Safe? Did she ever think about the scared little boy who carved her a necklace and promised to always protect her? That promise. It echoed in his mind, spoken in a child's voice with absolute conviction. "I'll always protect you, Keisha. No matter what happens, I'll keep you safe." He'd failed her. When his father's men took him, he'd failed to keep that promise. She'd been alone in that orphanage, and there was nothing he could do about it. But he wasn't helpless anymore. He commanded resources that could reshape the world to his will. Men feared his name. Governments negotiated with him. Nothing and no one was beyond his reach. The question was what to do with this impossible gift of finding her again. His first instinct, the one shaped by years of taking what he wanted, was simple. Approach her, reveal himself, take her with him, back into his world where he could keep that childhood promise and ensure nothing ever hurt her again. But even as the thought formed, he recognized its impossibility. Keisha didn't know him. She'd grown up and built a life completely separate from the boy she knew in the orphanage. Walking up to her and declaring, "I'm Seok-won, remember me?" would make him seem insane at best, threatening at worst. And how could he explain what he'd become? The scared child she protected had transformed into a monster who built an empire on violence and fear. The hands that carved her that necklace had blood on them now. So much blood that he'd stopped counting years ago. She saw him as just another wealthy customer in an expensive suit. If she knew the truth, who he was, what he'd done, would she run? Would those warm eyes fill with fear and disgust? The thought made something twist in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation that he finally recognized as fear. Not the tactical fear that kept him alive in dangerous situations, but something deeper, more personal. He was afraid she'd hate what he'd become. Movement caught his eye. Keisha was heading toward the kitchen, her section apparently covered for the moment. The necklace glinted as she pushed through the swinging doors, and then she was gone from sight. Seok-won set down his wine glass with careful precision. His mind shifted into the mode that served him well in business negotiations and territorial disputes, analyzing the situation from every angle, identifying the optimal strategy. He needed information first. Everything about Keisha's current life, her circumstances, her safety. Then he could decide how to proceed. His phone was in his hand before the decision fully formed. He pulled up his contacts, found the name he needed, and typed out a message to James Chen, one of his most reliable investigators in New York. I need a complete background check. Priority 1, name, Keisha, late 20s, black female, currently employed as waitress at Aurelius Restaurant, Manhattan. I want everything. Current address, employment history, family, associates, financial status, any legal issues. 24 hours. He hesitated, then added, be discreet. If she notices any investigation, you're done. The message sent. James would come through. He always did, and he knew better than to ask questions about Seok-won's sudden interest in a waitress. Seok-won sat back in his chair, forcing himself to appear relaxed even as his mind raced. Across the restaurant, other diners continued their meals, oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred in his world. The door to the kitchen swung open. Keisha emerged, carrying a tray laden with dishes for another table. She moved with the efficient grace of someone who'd worked in service for years, balancing the weight easily as she navigated between tables. She was alive. She was here. After 15 years of searching and 5 years of trying to forget, the universe had placed her directly in his path. Seok-won didn't believe in fate or divine providence. He believed in power, strategy, and the cold calculation that turned probability in his favor. But this felt like something else entirely. His father's voice echoed in his memory, cold and pragmatic. Sentiment is weakness. Attachment is vulnerability. A true leader keeps no one close enough to become a liability. For 23 years, Seok-won had followed that philosophy. He'd built his empire on calculated relationships where everyone served a purpose, and no one got close enough to matter. But Keisha had mattered before he knew to guard against it. She'd been the only bright spot in a childhood of darkness. The only person who saw him as someone worth protecting instead of someone to exploit or break. And the fact that she still wore his necklace, that crude piece of metal he'd made with bleeding fingers and desperate love, meant something. She'd kept it for 15 years, through whatever life she'd lived after the orphanage. She'd remembered him, even if she didn't recognize what he'd become. The thought settled something in Seok-won's chest, a determination that felt different from his usual cold calculation. This wasn't about strategy or empire building or proving anything to the ghost of his father. This was about keeping a promise he'd made when he was 9 years old, before violence and power reshaped him into something unrecognizable. He'd promised to protect her. And he would, whether she knew who he was or not. But first, he needed to understand the woman she'd become, the life she'd built. Then he could figure out how to weave himself back into her world without destroying everything she'd created. Seok-won reached for his wine glass again, his composure finally settling back into place like armor. To any observer, he was just another wealthy businessman enjoying an expensive meal, bored and detached from his surroundings. No one would see the storm of emotion and calculation beneath the surface. No one would recognize the significance of a simple silver necklace and the memories it awakened. No one except the man who'd carved it with bleeding fingers and a desperate need to give something beautiful to the only person who'd shown him kindness. Keisha moved through the restaurant, unaware that her past had just walked back into her life wearing a $10,000 suit and eyes that had killed but still remembered everything about a little girl who sang away his nightmares. She'd saved him once, in that orphanage, by making him feel human when everyone else treated him like he was broken beyond repair. Now it was his turn. And this time, nothing. Not his empire, not his reputation, not even her own resistance would stop him from keeping the promise he'd made when they were children. He'd always protect her, even if she never knew who he really was. The game had changed, and Seok-won always won. All right, I need to know. Are you Team Seok-won? Or are you screaming at Keisha to run? Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching this from. 23 hours later, Seok-won sat in his penthouse suite at the Pierre, Manhattan's most exclusive hotel, reading through James Chen's report on his tablet. The investigation had been thorough, almost invasive in its detail, but Seok-won needed to know everything. Keisha Marie Thompson, 29 years old, born in Brooklyn to parents who died in a car accident when she was 6. No other family, which explained how she ended up in the same orphanage where Seok-won spent his early years. She'd aged out of the foster system at 18 with nothing but a high school diploma and determination. Worked her way through community college while juggling 3 part-time jobs, earned an associate degree in hospitality management. Currently employed at Aurelius for the past 4 years, working her way up from busser to server. No criminal record, no outstanding debts beyond student loans she was steadily paying down. A small apartment in Queens that she shared with a roommate. A clean, ordinary life built through hard work and persistence. But it was the financial details that made Seok-won's jaw tighten with barely contained anger. She made $38,000 a year before tips, in Manhattan, one of the most expensive cities in the world. Her rent alone consumed nearly half her income. The report included copies of past due medical bills from an emergency room visit 6 months ago, appendicitis that had required surgery. She was on a payment plan, struggling to cover the remaining balance her minimal health insurance didn't pay. She lived paycheck to paycheck, one emergency away from financial disaster, while he sat in hotel suites that cost more per night than she made in a month. The injustice of it burned through him like acid. Keisha, who'd shared her food with him when he was hungry, who'd protected him from bullies twice her size, who'd been the only light in a childhood of darkness, was struggling to survive while he had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. It was unacceptable. Seok-won set down the tablet and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The city spread out before him, glittering in the late afternoon sun, millions of lives intersecting in patterns of chance and choice. He'd found her. Against all probability, the universe had placed her directly in his path. Now he had to decide what to do about it. The simplest solution was the most direct. Approach her, explain who he was, and he offered to take care of her financial problems. He could pay off her medical bills, her student loans, set her up in a better apartment. Easy, clean, efficient. But Seok-won knew human nature too well to think it would work. Keisha had built her life through her own effort. She had pride, dignity, the kind of strength that came from surviving on her own terms. Offering her charity would insult everything she'd worked for. And there was still the matter of what he'd become. How did he explain that the scared orphan boy she remembered had transformed into a mafia boss with blood on his hands? That revelation alone might send her running, and he couldn't bear the thought of fear replacing the warmth in her eyes. No, this required a different approach, something subtle, strategic. He needed to be part of her life before she knew who he really was. To prove that despite everything he'd become, despite the violence and darkness that defined his empire, he was still capable of keeping the promise he'd made her. His phone rang. Young-ho's name flashed on the screen. Talk. Seok-won answered. We have a situation in Seoul. Kim's people are making noise about the waterfront territory. They're saying we're overstepping the agreement. Seok-won's mind instantly shifted into business mode, though part of him remained focused on the report about Keisha. Kim knows exactly where the boundaries are. This is posturing for his suppliers, showing he's not weak. Let him make noise, but put surveillance on his top lieutenants. If they move from talk to action, I want to know immediately. Understood. Also, the shipment from Busan cleared customs. No issues. Good. Anything else? Jung-ho hesitated, which was unusual. You've been in New York 3 days longer than planned. The board meeting in Seoul is in 48 hours. Translation. What are we still doing here? Seok-won looked out at the city, his reflection ghosting over the skyline. Reschedule it. We're staying in New York for the foreseeable future. Another pause. May I ask why? No. Young-ho knew better than to push. I'll inform the board. Shall I arrange for the apartment to be opened? Seok-won owned a penthouse in Tribeca, purchased years ago as a base for his New York operations. He rarely used it, preferring hotels when business brought him to the city. But if he was staying long-term, the apartment made more sense. Yes, and have my things moved from the hotel tomorrow. Consider it done. Seok-won ended the call and returned to the tablet, pulling up a different section of the report. Keisha's schedule at Aurelius. She worked 4 nights a week, Tuesday through Friday, 5 p.m. to midnight. Weekends off. Tonight was Thursday. She'd be there. An idea formed, risky but calculated. He could return to the restaurant. Not to reveal himself, not yet. Just to observe, to understand more about her current life. See how she interacted with co-workers, with customers. Learn her patterns, her mannerisms, everything that made her who she was now. It was borderline obsessive. He recognized that. But obsession was something Seok-won understood, even embraced. Half his empire was built on an obsessive attention to detail that others missed. And this was just another form of that. More personal, certainly. But the principle remained the same. He was about to reach for his phone to make a reservation when it rang again. This time, an unknown number with a Seoul country code. Seok-won answered in Korean. Yes? Seok-won si. The voice was older, cultured, speaking with the formal respect that came naturally in Korean business culture. It's been too long. He recognized the speaker immediately. Park Jin-ho, one of his father's oldest associates. A legitimate businessman on paper with connections that ran deep into Seoul's political establishment. In reality, he was one of the major players in their world, controlling significant portions of the city's underground economy. Park Si, I wasn't expecting your call. I heard you were in New York, expanding operations, from what I understand. Ambitious. There was something in the older man's tone that put Seok-won on alert. Park didn't call for social pleasantries. Business opportunities present themselves. I'm simply capitalizing on them. Of course, your father would be proud. He always said you had the instincts for this life. A pause, weighted with meaning. I'm calling because I received some interesting information. It seems someone has been asking questions about your time in the orphanage. Old records, staff members, that sort of thing. Seok-won's hand tightened on the phone. When? 3 days ago. American investigator working on behalf of an unnamed client. Very discreet, very professional. But our people noticed. 3 days ago, the same day Seok-won had hired James to investigate Keisha, which meant someone else was investigating him, and the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Do we know who hired the investigator? Not yet, but I have people looking into it. I wanted to give you advance warning. Someone is digging into your past, Seok-won. That's rarely good for men in our position. No, it wasn't. Seok-won had worked hard to bury his orphanage years, to ensure that narrative couldn't be used against him by rivals or enemies. The official story was simpler. Kang Jae-sung's illegitimate son, raised in America, brought into the family at 9. No one needed to know about the orphanage, about the poverty and helplessness that defined his early years. Weakness was vulnerability in their world, and his childhood had been nothing but weakness. Thank you for the information, Park Si. I'll handle it from here. I'm sure you will. One more thing. Be careful, Seok-won. Whoever is digging into your past has resources and motivation. That combination is dangerous. The call ended. Seok-won stood motionless, his mind working through the implications. Someone was investigating his orphanage years at the exact moment he'd found Keisha again. That couldn't be random. But what was the connection? Who would care about his childhood, and why now? His phone buzzed with a text. James Chen. Need to talk. In person. It's urgent. Seok-won typed back an address. A coffee shop in Midtown, public enough to be safe, private enough to talk. 30 minutes. He grabbed his jacket, already signaling Young-ho through their secure messaging system. Something was happening. Pieces moving on a board he couldn't quite see yet. But one thing was certain. His past and present were colliding in ways he hadn't anticipated. And Keisha was somehow at the center of it, whether she knew it or not. Which meant protecting her had just become infinitely more complicated. The coffee shop was one of those anonymous places that existed in every major city. Adequate coffee, unremarkable decor, the kind of establishment people pass through without remembering. Perfect for a meeting that required discretion. James Chen sat in the back corner, his laptop already open, looking more stressed than Seok-won had ever seen him. The investigator was normally unflappable, a former FBI analyst who'd gone private and built a reputation on thoroughness and discretion. But now his hands shook slightly as he lifted his coffee cup. Seok-won slid into the seat across from him, Young-ho taking position near the entrance with a clear view of the street. Talk. James glanced around, then leaned forward, keeping his voice low. The background check you requested on Keisha Thompson. I found everything you asked for. But I also found something else. Something that doesn't make sense. Explain. 3 days ago, the same day you hired me, someone else initiated a background check on her. Same depth, same scope. Professional-grade investigation, not some amateur job. Whoever hired them has serious resources. Seok-won's expression remained neutral, but his mind raced. Park had said someone was investigating his orphanage years. Now James was saying someone was also investigating Keisha. You're certain? Positive. I have contacts in the industry. When 2 investigators start digging into the same person simultaneously, we notice. Professional courtesy. We don't want to step on each other's work or alert the target. James turned his laptop screen towards Seok-won. But here's where it gets weird. I did some digging into who hired the other investigator. He pulled up a corporate filing document. The investigation was commissioned by Hartley Acquisitions, a private equity firm based in Manhattan. On paper, they do commercial real estate development. But when I dug deeper, he clicked through several more documents. Hartley is a shell company. Layers of holdings and subsidiaries that ultimately trace back to a parent corporation in Seoul. Seok-won's blood went cold. What parent corporation? Daehan Strategic Industries. The name hit Seok-won like a physical blow. Daehan Strategic Industries was owned by the Park family, not Park Jin-ho, who'd called him earlier, but his nephew, Park Hyun-woo. A rival who'd been circling Seok-won's territory for years, looking for any weakness to exploit. There's more, James continued, his voice dropping even lower. I accessed the investigators' preliminary findings. Keisha Thompson has been under active surveillance for the past 6 months. Photos, daily routines, known associates. Someone has been watching her long before you ever walked into that restaurant. Seok-won's hands clenched beneath the table, his mind working through the implications with cold precision. Park Hyun-woo was watching Keisha, had been watching her for months, which meant this wasn't about her at all. It was about him. But how did Park know about Keisha? How did he know she mattered? Is there any indication they've made contact with her? Seok-won asked, his voice deadly calm. Not that I can find. The surveillance appears to be observational only, but... James hesitated. There's something else in the file that doesn't fit. Medical records from 15 years ago. From the orphanage. He pulled up another document, heavily redacted but still partially readable. Seok-won scanned it, his pulse quickening as certain words jumped out at him. Blood test, DNA, analysis. Sibling match probability, 99.7%. What is this? Seok-won demanded. That's what I wanted to ask you. According to these records, Keisha Thompson and someone identified only as Patient K underwent DNA testing when they were both in the orphanage. The results indicate they're biological siblings. The world tilted. Seok-won stared at the document, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. That's impossible. The documentation is authentic. I verified the hospital codes, the lab that processed the tests. This is real. James met his eyes. Patient K's identification number matches the orphanage records for a boy named Minho, who was processed into the system the same month you were. Minho. His Korean name before his father claimed him and gave him the family name. Before he became Kang Seok-won. You're saying Keisha and I are siblings? The words felt absurd leaving his mouth. Half-siblings, most likely, given the DNA match isn't quite high enough for full siblings. But yes, according to these records, you share at least one biological parent. Seok-won's mind reeled. His mother, his American mother who died giving birth to him, had another child? A daughter? And that meant Keisha was his half-sister, sharing the same mother. But that made no sense. Keisha's parents died in a car accident when she was 6. The report James compiled was clear on that. She wasn't abandoned as a baby like he was. There's a problem with this. Seok-won said slowly. Keisha Thompson's parents are documented. Death certificates, police reports from the accident. She wasn't given up for adoption like I was. James nodded. I know. Which means either the DNA test is wrong or someone falsified Keisha's family history. And given the resources Park Hyun-woo is putting into investigating this, I'm betting on the latter. The implications crashed through Seok-won like a wave. If Keisha was his half-sister, if they shared his American mother, then her entire identity, the car accident, the dead parents, as everything, was a constructed lie. But why? Who would go to such elaborate lengths to hide her true parentage? And more importantly, how did Park Hyun-woo know about this when Seok-won himself had no idea? Does Park know about the DNA results? Seok-won asked. I can't be certain, but given the scope of his investigation, I'd assume yes. He's clearly looking for something, and he's putting significant resources into watching Keisha. Seok-won's protective instincts roared to life, mixing with a cold fury that made his vision sharpen. Park was watching Keisha, investigating her, which meant she was in danger, whether she knew it or not. If Park discovered she was Seok-won's half-sister, assuming the DNA test was accurate, he'd use her as leverage. A weakness to exploit. The one thing Seok-won's father always warned against. Family that could be turned into a weapon. I need everything, Seok-won said, his voice hard. Every piece of surveillance Park has on her. His investigator's full report. Any communication about her or this DNA test. I want to know exactly what he knows. That's going to be difficult. Park's security is tight, and if he realizes we're digging, I don't care. Get it done. Seok-won fixed James with a look that had made harder men than him flinch. Use whatever resources you need. Hire whoever you have to hire. But I want that information, and I want it before Park makes his move. James nodded quickly. I'll start immediately. One more thing. The DNA test. I want it verified independently. Different lab, different samples if we can get them. I need to know if this is real or if someone is playing a very elaborate game. Understood. Though getting a sample from Keisha without her knowledge will be tricky. Then get creative. Seok-won stood, signaling Jung-ho. And James? This conversation never happened. If Park's people come asking questions, you know nothing about my interest in Keisha Thompson. Of course. Seok-won left the coffee shop, his mind churning through scenarios and strategies. Jung-ho fell into step beside him, silent but alert. Half-siblings. The possibility seemed absurd, yet the documentation James showed him looked legitimate. which meant either it was an incredibly sophisticated forgery designed to manipulate him, or his father had lied about more than Seok-won realized. His father. Always secretive, always controlling information like a weapon. Had Kang Jae-sung known about Keisha? Had he known his dead mistress had another child, a daughter, and deliberately kept that information hidden? It would be exactly like his father to keep such a devastating secret. To let Seok-won spend years searching for a childhood friend, never revealing that friend was actually his half-sister. But why? What purpose did that secrecy serve? Unless his father feared exactly what was happening now, that enemies would discover the connection and use it against them. A mafia boss's illegitimate children were always targets, always potential weaknesses to exploit. Better to keep Keisha hidden, unknown, safe through obscurity. Except she wasn't safe anymore. Park Hyun-woo had found her, was watching her. And if Park knew about the DNA test, he'd eventually make his move. Seok-won's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. About the girl. Tonight. 10 p.m., Pier 76. No signature, but Seok-won recognized the setup. An invitation from someone in their world who wanted to negotiate or threaten, or both. The location was public enough to prevent outright violence, but isolated enough for a private conversation. This had Park written all over it. Young-ho had read the message over his shoulder. Could be a trap. Probably is. Seok-won checked his watch. 4 hours until the meeting. Contact Min-jae and Dae-jung, full security detail, and find out who owns the warehouses near Pier 76. I want to know if Park has people positioned there. You're actually going? He wants to talk about Keisha. I need to know what he knows and what he wants. Seok-won's voice hardened. And if he's made any moves toward her, I need to send a very clear message about what happens to people who threaten what's mine. Young-ho nodded, already pulling out his phone to coordinate. Seok-won continued walking, his destination clear in his mind. Aurelius Restaurant, where Keisha would be starting her shift in less than an hour. He needed to see her again, to reconcile the childhood friend he remembered with the possibility that she was his half-sister. To look at her with this new information and understand what it meant. And he needed to make sure she was safe. Because if Park was bold enough to send that text, he was already several moves into whatever game he was playing. The question was whether Keisha was the prize or the pawn. Either way, Seok-won would burn down anyone who tried to use her against him. The restaurant was already filling with early diners when Seok-won arrived. He'd called ahead this time, securing the same corner table. The maitre d' recognized him from the previous visit, greeting him with the practiced warmth reserved for wealthy repeat customers. "Mr. Kang, welcome back. Your table is ready." Seok-won followed him through the dining room, scanning automatically for exits and potential threats. Jung-ho had positioned himself near the bar with clear sightlines to Seok-won's table. Min-jae watched from near the restrooms, every precaution in place. He ordered the same wine as before, settled into his seat, and waited. Keisha appeared 10 minutes later, carrying a tray of drinks to a nearby table. She hadn't noticed him yet, focused on her work with the same efficient grace he'd observed during his first visit. The silver necklace caught the light as she moved, that crude piece of metal he'd carved with bleeding fingers and desperate hope. His necklace, around the neck of a woman who might be his half-sister. The thought still felt surreal, impossible. But as he watched her, Seok-won began to see things he'd missed during their first encounter. The shape of her eyes, similar to his, though he'd never noticed before. The way she tilted her head when listening to customers, a gesture his father always said came from Seok-won's mother. Small things, subtle similarities that could be coincidence or could be genetic inheritance. "Good evening." Seok-won looked up to find Keisha standing beside his table, her professional smile in place. Their eyes met, and for a moment he searched her face for any sign of recognition. Any indication she felt the strange pull he did? Nothing. Just polite customer service and warmth that came naturally to her. "Good evening," he replied, keeping his voice neutral. "I remember you from earlier this week. The 1990 Chateau Margaux, right?" She gestured to his wine glass. "Excellent choice. You have a good memory." "Part of the job. Though to be fair, not many customers order wine that's older than I am." Her smile widened slightly, genuine warmth breaking through the professional veneer. Seok-won found himself smiling back before he could stop himself. "A special occasion. Celebrating something? Finding something I thought I'd lost." The words came out before he could censor them. Too honest, too revealing. But Keisha just nodded, apparently taking it as a reference to business success or personal achievement. "That deserves good wine then. Can I get you started with anything? The chef has a new special tonight. Butter-poached lobster with saffron risotto." "That sounds perfect." She wrote down the order, and as she did, the necklace swayed forward. Up close, Seok-won could see the details he'd carved all those years ago. Tiny marks where his knife had slipped, the uneven edges that betrayed the shaking hands of a terrified child. "That's an interesting necklace," he said, the words out before he could consider the wisdom of drawing attention to it. Keisha's hand went to it instinctively, a protective gesture. "Thank you. It's old. From when I was a kid. It means something to you." "Yeah." Her expression softened, became distant. "Someone gave it to me a long time ago. A friend who—" She stopped, seeming to catch herself. "Sorry. I'm sure you don't want to hear about my childhood jewelry." "Actually, I do." Seok-won leaned forward slightly, his full attention on her. "Who gave it to you?" Keisha hesitated, and he could see her weighing whether to share something so personal with a customer. But something in his expression, maybe the intensity of his interest, maybe something deeper she couldn't name, made her continue. "There was this boy in the orphanage where I grew up. We were friends. He was quiet, kept to himself mostly, but we looked out for each other." Her fingers traced the necklace, a gesture so familiar it made Seok-won's chest tight. "He made this for me. Carved it from a spoon handle, can you believe that? Just to give me something that was mine." "What happened to him?" "He got adopted. One day these men came and took him away. He was crying, fighting them, but they just took him." Her voice dropped, pain flickering across her face. "I never saw him again, but I kept the necklace. It reminds me that someone once thought I was worth protecting." The words hit Seok-won like bullets, each one finding a target he didn't know was vulnerable. She remembered. After 15 years, she still remembered that day, still wore his gift, still thought about the boy who'd failed to protect her when it mattered most. "I'm sure he never forgot you," Seok-won said quietly. Keisha looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment something flickered in her eyes. A question. A recognition that didn't quite form. Then she blinked and it was gone, replaced by her professional smile. "That's kind of you to say. I'll put in your order." She walked away, leaving Seok-won sitting in silence with revelation crashing through him like thunder. She remembered him, mourned him, wore his promise around her neck every single day. And if the DNA test was accurate, she was his sister. His family. The only blood relation he had left in the world beyond the empire his father built. His phone buzzed. Young-ho. "We have a problem. Park's men just entered the building. 3 of them, armed. They're heading for the service elevator." Seok-won was on his feet instantly, his mind shifting from emotional turmoil to tactical precision. Park's men were here, at the restaurant. Which meant either they were coming for him or... His blood went cold. They were coming for Keisha. He moved through the restaurant with controlled urgency, Jung-ho and Min-jae converging on his position. Where are they now? Surface level, heading toward the kitchen. They know the layout. Of course they did. Park had been watching Keisha for months. He knew where she worked, knew her routine, knew exactly how to get to her. Seok-won reached the kitchen entrance just as screams erupted from inside. He burst through the swinging doors to find chaos. Staff scattering, pots clattering to the floor, and 3 men in dark suits pushing through toward the back exit where Keisha stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror. The lead man grabbed her arm, and something in Seok-won's chest simply shattered. He crossed the space in seconds, moving with a violence that came from years of training and a rage that came from somewhere far deeper. His fist connected with the first man's jaw, a crack of bone that sent him sprawling. The second man reached for his weapon, but Jung-ho was already there, disarming him with brutal efficiency. The third man, smarter or more experienced, released Keisha and backed toward the exit, hands raised. We're just delivering a message. Park wants to talk. Then Park can come himself. Seok-won positioned himself between the man and Keisha, every line of his body radiating lethal intent. Tell him if he sends anyone near her again, I'll send them back in pieces. The man's eyes flickered to Keisha, then back to Seok-won. He said you'd be protective. Said that's how he knew. Knew what? That she matters to you. More than just some waitress. The man smiled, cold and knowing. He's got the DNA results, knows exactly who she is, and he's wondering what she's worth to you. Her life for your territory, that's the deal. You have until tomorrow night to decide. Then he was gone, disappearing through the exit before Seok-won could reach him. Jung-ho moved to follow, but Seok-won stopped him with a gesture. The damage was done. Park had made his move, revealed his leverage. Seok-won turned to find Keisha pressed against the wall, her chest heaving with panicked breaths. Her eyes locked on him with a mixture of fear and confusion and something else. Recognition starting to dawn. Who are you? She whispered. And Seok-won realized everything had just changed. He couldn't protect her from the shadows anymore. Couldn't ease into her life gradually, earning her trust. Park had forced his hand, and now he had no choice but to tell her everything. My name is Kang Seok-won, he said quietly, watching her process the Korean name. But you knew me as Min-ho, the boy from the orphanage, the one who made you that necklace. Keisha's hand went to the silver pendant, her eyes widening impossibly further. That's impossible. Min-ho was 9 years old when my father's men took me. I know. I've changed. But I never forgot you, Keisha. And that necklace? I carved it to keep a promise. He took a step closer, his voice dropping. I told you I'd always protect you. That promise still stands. But right now, you're in danger because of me, and I need you to trust me long enough to keep you safe. She stared at him, breathing hard, clearly trying to reconcile the terrified child she remembered with the dangerous man standing before her. The DNA results those men mentioned. Seok-won continued, his voice steady despite the chaos of his emotions. They say you and I are half-siblings, that we share a mother. I don't know if it's true, but someone very dangerous believes it is, and they're going to use you to get to me. Half-siblings? Keisha's voice cracked. But my parents, the accident, may not have been your real parents. I don't have all the answers yet. But I will. He held out his hand. Right now, I need you to come with me. Somewhere safe. And then I'll explain everything. Keisha looked at his outstretched hand, at the necklace she'd worn for 15 years, at the man claiming to be her childhood friend and possibly her brother. Please, Seok-won said, and it was the first time in years he'd said that word and meant it. Trust me like you did when we were children. Just one more time. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, her hand rose and clasped his. Okay. she whispered. But you better have one hell of an explanation. Seok-won's fingers closed around hers, and he felt the weight of every promise he'd ever made settling on his shoulders. I do. And Keisha? He met her eyes. I'm sorry I failed you before, but I swear on everything I am, I won't fail you again. The penthouse in Tribeca was a fortress disguised as luxury. Floor-to-ceiling bulletproof windows, reinforced steel doors hidden behind elegant woodwork, and a security system that would make most government facilities jealous. Seok-won had bought it 3 years ago precisely for situations like this, when he needed a secure location in New York that his enemies wouldn't immediately associate with him. Keisha stood in the center of the living room, still wearing her work uniform, her arms wrapped around herself as she took in the surroundings. Young-ho and Min-jae had swept the apartment twice already, confirming it was clean. Now they positioned themselves at strategic points. Jung-ho by the elevator, Min-jae monitoring security feeds from a laptop set up in the dining room. Seok-won poured water into a glass, his movements controlled despite the adrenaline still coursing through his system. He handed it to Keisha, watching as she took it with trembling fingers. Drink, he said quietly. She did, draining half the glass before setting it on the coffee table. Then she looked at him, really looked at him, searching his face for the child she'd known. Your eyes, she said finally. I remember your eyes. They were always so sad. The observation hit harder than Seok-won expected. You used to sing to me when I had nightmares. Lean on me, Keisha whispered. You'd wake up crying and I'd sing until you fell back asleep. Her hand went to the necklace again, that unconscious protective gesture. The caretakers said you got adopted, that some rich family wanted you. That's not exactly what happened. Seok-won moved to the windows, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. My father didn't adopt me. He claimed me. There's a difference. I don't understand. My father was Kang Jae-sung, head of one of Seoul's most powerful criminal organizations. My mother was an American woman he had an affair with while doing business in New York. She died giving birth to me, and I was placed in the orphanage. My father didn't know I existed until I was 9. Seok-won turned back to face her, watching her process this information. When he found out, he sent his men to take me. I didn't want to go. I fought them. I was screaming your name when they dragged me into that car. Keisha's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I remember. I ran after the car until one of the caretakers pulled me back inside. My father trained me, educated me, molded me into his heir. And when he died 2 years ago, I inherited his empire. Seok-won's voice remained steady, clinical, as he revealed the truth of what he'd become. I run a criminal organization, Keisha. The men who attacked you tonight work for a rival who wants my territory. He watched for her reaction. The fear, the disgust. The moment she'd realized the boy she protected had become a monster. But Keisha just stood there, absorbing his words with a strange calm. Why me? She asked finally. Why would your rival care about a waitress he's never met? Because I care about you. And in my world, anything you care about becomes a weapon someone can use against you. But you didn't even know I existed until a few days ago. I've been searching for you for 15 years. The admission came out raw, honest. Every investigator I could hire, every resource at my disposal, I never stopped looking. Keisha's breath caught. Why? Because you were the only good thing in my childhood. The only person who made me feel like I mattered. Seok-won took a step closer. When my father's men took me, I promised myself that if I ever found you again, I'd make sure nothing ever hurt you. That promise kept me sane through years of training that was designed to break me. Min-ho. Seok-won. He corrected gently. Min-ho died in my father's compound. But the promise he made to you, and that survived. Keisha wrapped her arms tighter around herself. This is insane. Yesterday I was worried about making rent. Now I'm apparently caught in some Mafia war because a childhood friend became a crime boss and never forgot about me. It's more than not forgetting. Seok-won closed the distance between them, close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. I've built an empire on ruthlessness and calculated violence. I don't let people close. I don't form attachments. But you, Keisha? You've been in my head for 15 years. And now that I've found you, now that you're real and not just a memory I've romanticized, I'm not letting you go. You don't own me. Not yet. His voice dropped, intimate and dangerous. But I will protect you, whether you want me to or not. Keisha's eyes flashed with defiance. I'm not some damsel who needs saving. I've survived just fine on my own. Have you? Seok-won gestured to her uniform, to the simple clothing that spoke of a life lived paycheck to paycheck. You work yourself to exhaustion for barely enough to survive. You have medical debt you can't pay. You share a cramped apartment because you can't afford anything better. How do you know about my medical debt? I know everything about you. Where you live, where you work, how much you make, what you owe. I had you investigated the moment I saw you wearing my necklace. Anger sparked in her expression. You had no right. I had every right. You're mine to protect, which means I need to know every threat, every vulnerability, every way someone could hurt you. He reached out, his fingers brushing the silver necklace. You kept this. For 15 years, you kept a crude piece of metal carved by a terrified child. That means something. Keisha's breath hitched at his touch. It means I never forgot my friend. Is that all I am to you? A friend? The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither wanted to examine too closely. Because there was something in the air when they were close. Something that had nothing to do with childhood memories and everything to do with the attraction crackling between them. I don't know what you are, Keisha admitted. I don't know you anymore. The boy I knew was gentle and scared. You're a monster? Dangerous. She met his eyes. You're dangerous, and I should be running as far from you as possible. But you're not running. No, I'm not. Seok-won's hand moved from the necklace to her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. You should be afraid of me. I know. I've killed people, Keisha. More than I can count. I've built my fortune on violence and fear. I know that too. And yet you're still standing here, letting me touch you, looking at me like... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Like what? Like you see the boy I used to be underneath the monster I've become. Keisha's hand came up to cover his, pressing his palm against her cheek. Maybe I do. Or maybe I see both, and I'm trying to figure out which one is real. They're both real. That's the problem. Before either could say more, Young-ho cleared his throat from across the room. We have a situation. Park's people just sent a message. Seok-won reluctantly stepped back, his hand falling away from Keisha's face. You may show me. Jung-ho held up a tablet displaying a video. Seok-won took it, Keisha moving closer to see the screen. The video showed a warehouse, dimly lit, with a woman bound to a chair in the center. She was in her late 50s, black, her face bruised but her eyes defiant. The camera zoomed in on her face. Oh my God, Keisha whispered. That's Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. Seok-won's jaw tightened. So Park had done his homework, found Keisha's only living relative and taken her as additional leverage. A man's voice spoke off camera, cold and professional. Kang Seok-won, I trust you recognize Ms. Carol Thompson. She's been quite informative about your little waitress friend. Did you know Keisha used to call her every Sunday? That they're very close despite living in different cities? The camera panned back to show Carol more fully. Her hands were bound, but her expression was fierce, unbroken. Keisha has 24 hours to turn herself over to us, the voice continued. If she cooperates, her aunt lives. If she doesn't, well, let's just say Carol Thompson has a lot to lose, starting with her fingers. The video ended. Keisha stood frozen, her face pale. They have Aunt Carol. They're going to hurt her because of me. No. Seok-won's voice was hard as steel. They're going to hurt her because of me. This is Park's way of forcing my hand. Then we give him what he wants. Me for my aunt. Absolutely not. You don't get to make that decision. Yes, I do. Seok-won turned to face her fully, his expression leaving no room for argument. You're under my protection now. That means no one touches you. Not Park, not his men. Not anyone. My aunt will die. Your aunt will be rescued, but not by sacrificing you. He pulled out his phone, already formulating a plan. Jung-ho, I need a location on that warehouse. Use every resource we have. On it. Seok-won turned back to Keisha. Park made a mistake by taking your aunt. He's given us a target, a location we can hit. That's leverage. You're going to attack them? Start a war? The war already started the moment Park's men put their hands on you in that kitchen. His voice dropped, intimate and deadly. I told you I'd protect you. That includes everyone you care about. Keisha stared at him. Why? Why risk your empire, your people, everything you've built for someone you barely know anymore? Because you're not just someone. Seok-won moved closer, invading her space, making her tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. You're the only person who ever made me feel human. The only one who saw something worth protecting in a scared, broken child. And now that I have the power to return that kindness, you think I'm going to walk away? This isn't kindness. This is obsession. Maybe. But it's my obsession, and you're stuck with it. His phone buzzed. A message from James. DNA results came back. No genetic relation between you and Keisha Thompson. Park's documents were fabricated. Relief flooded through Seok-won so intensely he had to steady himself. Not siblings. The DNA test Park had used to manipulate him was a lie. Which meant everything he felt for Keisha, the attraction, the possessiveness, the overwhelming need to claim her as his, wasn't wrong. It was just dangerous. What is it? Keisha asked, noticing his expression. Nothing. Just confirming something. He looked at her, at this woman who'd occupied his thoughts for 15 years, and made a decision. When this is over, when your aunt is safe and Park is dealt with, you and I need to have a conversation about what happens next. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not walking away from you again. Not now that I've found you. His voice was firm, possessive. So you need to decide if you can handle being part of my world. Because I'm not going back to Seoul without you. Keisha's eyes widened. You can't just decide that. Watch me. Before she could respond, Min-jae called out from his position. Boss, we've got company. Multiple vehicles approaching from 3 directions. ETA, 2 minutes. Seok-won cursed. Park's moving faster than expected. Young-ho, alternate exit? Service stairs to the parking garage. Go, now. They moved quickly, Young-ho leading the way while Min-jae covered their rear. Seok-won kept Keisha close, one hand on her lower back, guiding her through the apartment. The stairwell was concrete and industrial, their footsteps echoing as they descended. Seok-won's mind raced through contingencies, calculating their next move. They reached the parking garage to find 2 black SUVs waiting, engines running. But something was wrong. The drivers weren't his usual people. Stop, Seok-won commanded, pulling Keisha behind him. One of the drivers stepped out, hands raised. Mr. Kang, Park sent us to escort you and the girl to a meeting. He wants to negotiate. I don't negotiate with people who kidnap civilians. He anticipated you'd say that. The driver pulled out a phone, showing a live video feed. Carol Thompson, still bound, but now with a gun pressed to her head. He says if you don't come willingly, the aunt dies. Your choice. Keisha gasped beside him. Seok-won's mind worked through options, all of them bad. If we go with them, they'll kill us both. He said quietly to Keisha. And if we don't, they kill Aunt Carol. I can get her back, but I need time. We don't have time. Keisha's voice broke. She's all I have. The only family I have left? I can't let her die because of me. Seok-won looked at her, at the desperation and fear in her eyes, and felt something crack in his chest. He'd promised to protect her. But protecting her meant respecting what she cared about, even if it put them both at risk. All right, he said finally, turning to the driver. We'll come, but if anything happens to her aunt before we get there, the deal is off and everyone dies. The driver nodded, speaking into his radio. A moment later, the video feed showed the gun being removed from Carol's head. Young-ho moved closer. This is a trap. I know, but we're going anyway. Seok-won looked at his head of security. Give me 30 minutes. If you don't hear from me, burn down everything Park owns. Every property, every asset, every person who works for him. Leave nothing. Young-ho's expression was grim, but he nodded. Understood. Seok-won turned to Keisha. Stay close to me. No matter what happens, you stay within arm's reach. Understand? Yes. They climbed into the SUV, the doors locking automatically once they were inside. The driver pulled out, heading south through Manhattan's late-night streets. Keisha sat rigid beside Seok-won, her hands clenched in her lap. He reached over, covering her hands with one of his. I won't let them hurt you, he said quietly. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Because I've spent 15 years becoming the kind of man who keeps his promises. His fingers tightened on hers. I failed you once when my father's men took me. I won't fail you again. Keisha looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. You really never stopped thinking about me? Not once. You were the reason I survived my father's training. Every time he tried to break me, I'd think about you singing in the dark. And I'd remember there was still something good in the world worth fighting for. I'm not that special, Minho. I was just a kid who didn't like seeing another kid hurt. Seok-won, he corrected gently. And you were everything to me. You still are. The confession hung between them. Too honest, too raw. Keisha's breath caught, and for a moment Seok-won saw something in her eyes that mirrored what he felt. That pull, that connection that had nothing to do with childhood and everything to do with the present. Then the SUV stopped. They'd arrived at a warehouse on the waterfront, isolated and dark. The kind of place where bad things happened and no one heard the screams. The driver opened their door. This way! Seok-won stepped out first, positioning himself between Keisha and any potential threats. The warehouse was massive, its interior lit by harsh industrial lights that cast deep shadows. Park Hyun-woo stood in the center of the space, surrounded by at least 20 armed men. He was younger than Seok-won expected, early 40s, handsome in a cold way, wearing an expensive suit that was just a shade too flashy to be truly sophisticated. Kang Seok-won. Park's voice was smooth, amused. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Where's the aunt? Park gestured, and two men dragged Carol Thompson forward. She was bruised but alive, her eyes finding Keisha immediately. Keisha, baby, I'm so sorry, Carol said, her voice hoarse. Aunt Carol? Touching reunion. Park interrupted. But we have business to discuss. Seok-won, you've become quite the thorn in my side. Expanding into territories I've spent years cultivating. Making deals with families who are loyal to me. It's disrespectful. Business is business. You want my territories, make me a better offer. Oh, I'm not interested in negotiation. Park's smile widened. I'm interested in domination. You see, I've learned something interesting about you. For all your reputation as a ruthless businessman, you have a weakness. This woman. He gestured to Keisha. A childhood friend you've pined over for years. How touching. How pathetic. Seok-won's expression remained neutral, but his mind was already calculating distances, counting enemies, identifying weapons. Here's my offer, Park continued. You sign over your New York operations to me, along with a significant portion of your Asian holdings. In exchange, I let you and your precious Keisha walk out of here alive. The aunt, too, if you're quick about it. And if I refuse? Then I kill you both, take your territories anyway, and throw the aunt's body in the river. Park's smile turned cruel. Your choice. Your empire or your childhood sweetheart? Seok-won was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing. The sound was unexpected enough that Park's confident expression faltered. What's so funny? You, Seok-won said, his laughter fading into something cold and dangerous. You actually think you have leverage. You think taking one woman hostage is enough to make me surrender an empire. She's not just one woman. She's the woman you've been searching for. And that's where you made your mistake. Seok-won's voice dropped, deadly calm. You assumed I'd trade everything for her safety, but what you didn't account for is what she means to me. She's not just someone I want to protect. She's mine. And I don't surrender what's mine. Ever. He looked at Park with eyes that had seen far worse things than anything this amateur could imagine. I built my empire on the corpses of men who underestimated me. My father trained me to value power above all else. And you think one hostage is enough? Seok-won pulled out his phone, showing Park the screen. Recognize this? It's a live feed of your penthouse in Seoul, where your wife and 2 daughters are currently sleeping. Beautiful family. Park's face went white. You wouldn't I? Seok-won's voice was silk over steel. You threatened the woman I care about. You think I won't do the same? The difference is, I actually have the resources to follow through. He swiped to another screen. This is your main distribution center in Busan. Notice anything? That's C4 explosive, professionally placed. One phone call and the entire building disappears. Another swipe. Your yacht in Hong Kong Harbor, your private accounts in the Caymans, your mistress's apartment in Tokyo. Each image appeared, proof of how thoroughly Seok-won had infiltrated Park's life. I know everything about you. Every asset, every secret, every person you care about. Park's confident demeanor was cracking. You're bluffing. Am I? Seok-won took a step forward. You've been so focused on finding my weakness, you forgot to protect your own. That's the difference between an amateur and someone who was raised in this life. I don't leave vulnerabilities exposed. He gestured to Keisha and Carol. You wanted to trade? Fine. Here's my offer. You release them both. You leave New York permanently, and you forget you ever heard the name Keisha Thompson. In exchange, I don't reduce everything you love to ash. You'd start a war. I'd end one. Seok-won's voice was absolute. You made this personal when you touched her. Now you get to live with the consequences. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Park made his decision. He signaled his men to release Carol. But one of Park's lieutenants had other ideas. He raised his gun, aiming at Keisha. Everything happened in seconds. Seok-won moved, drawing his own weapon with practiced speed, firing twice. The lieutenant dropped, his shot going wide. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Park's men opened fire, but they were shooting at shadows. Seok-won had already grabbed Keisha, pulling her behind a concrete pillar as bullets chewed into the space where they'd been standing. Stay down, he commanded, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Young-ho and his team crashed through the warehouse's side entrance. They'd been positioned outside, waiting for exactly this scenario. The fight became brutal and efficient. Seok-won's people cutting through Park's men with professional precision. Seok-won kept Keisha behind him, his body a shield between her and any threat. When one of Park's men got too close, Seok-won didn't hesitate. He put the man down with a shot that was cold and calculated, then immediately refocused on protecting Keisha. "Where's Carol?" Keisha shouted over the gunfire. Seok-won scanned the chaos, spotting the older woman being dragged toward an exit by two of Park's men. He made a split-second decision. "Jung-ho," he called out. "The ant, southwest corner." Jung-ho nodded, redirecting his team. They cut off the escape route, forcing Park's men to drop Carol and retreat. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, Park's men were either dead or fleeing. Park himself was on his knees, Jung-ho's gun pressed to the back of his head. Seok-won stood, pulling Keisha up with him. "You okay?" She nodded shakily, then ran to her aunt. Carol was bruised and terrified but alive. They clung to each other, both crying. Seok-won watched them for a moment, something in his chest loosening at the sight. Then he turned to Park. "You made several mistakes tonight," he said conversationally, approaching the kneeling man. "First, you underestimated how far I'd go to protect what's mine. Second, you thought threatening civilians would make you look strong when really it just made you look weak. And third, you forgot that I'm Kang Jae-sung's son. I was trained by the most ruthless man in Seoul. What did you think would happen?" Park looked up at him with fear and hatred warring in his expression. "You can't kill me. My organization will fall apart within a week once word spreads that you died begging." Seok-won's voice was matter-of-fact. "That's how this works. Show weakness and the wolves descend." He looked at Jung-ho. "Make it clean, and make sure everyone knows what happens to people who threaten my interests." Jung-ho nodded. Seok-won turned away, walking back to where Keisha stood with her aunt. He didn't need to see what happened next. He'd given the order and Jung-ho would execute it efficiently. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Keisha flinched but didn't look away from Seok-won. In her eyes, he saw the full weight of what he'd just done, what he was. Not the scared boy from the orphanage, not even just a crime boss. A killer. "Let's get you both out of here," he said quietly, offering his hand to Carol. Carol took it hesitantly, letting him help her stand. "You're him, the boy Keisha used to talk about." "I was, a long time ago." "And now?" "Now I'm the man who keeps his promises." He looked at Keisha. "Even the ones I made when I was 9 years old." They left the warehouse, stepping out into the cool night air. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but they'd be gone long before any authorities arrived. Jung-ho had already arranged for cleanup crews to sanitize the scene. In the SUV, a different one, clean and untraceable, Seok-won sat across from Keisha and her aunt. Carol was shaking with delayed shock, and Keisha held her hand, providing silent comfort. "Thank you," Carol said finally, looking at Seok-won. "For saving me." "Thank Keisha. She's the reason any of this happened." "Because you care about her." "Yes." Carol studied him with sharp eyes that reminded him of Keisha's. "My niece is a good woman. She deserves better than a life of violence." "I know." "And yet you're not letting her go." "No, I'm not." "Why?" Seok-won met Carol's gaze directly. "Because she's the only thing that makes me remember I'm human, and I'm selfish enough to keep her close even though she deserves better." The honesty seemed to surprise Carol. She looked at her niece, then back at Seok-won. "At least you're honest about it." They drove in silence for several minutes. Finally, Keisha spoke. "Where are we going?" "Safe house in Connecticut. Rural, isolated. You and your aunt can stay there until we're certain all of Park's people are dealt with." "And then what?" "Then you decide." Seok-won leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "You can go back to your apartment, your job, your normal life. I'll make sure you're financially stable, That you never have to worry about money again. Or, or what? Or you come with me, back to Seoul, into my world. It won't be easy. It won't be safe. But you'll never be alone again. Keisha stared at him. You're asking me to choose between safety and you. I'm asking you to choose what you want. Not what's practical or smart. What you actually want. I don't even know you anymore. Then get to know me. Give me time to prove that the boy you sang to in the dark is still in here somewhere. His voice dropped, intimate despite Carol's presence. Give me a chance to show you what we could be. You just killed a man. Several men. And I'll kill more if they threaten you. That's who I am, Keisha. I won't apologize for it. I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking if you're capable of being anything other than a weapon. The question hit harder than any accusation. Seok-won sat back, considering his answer carefully. I don't know, he admitted finally. My father spent 23 years making sure I was nothing but a weapon. But when I'm with you, when I look at you, I feel something else. Something that terrifies me because it's a weakness I can't afford. What do you feel? Hope. The word came out rough, honest. That maybe I'm not completely broken. That maybe there's still something worth saving in what I've become. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. Minho? Seok-won. Please, Minho died a long time ago. No. She shook her head firmly. Minho is still in there. I see him every time you look at me. Every time you try to protect me. He's there underneath all the violence and control. And if he's not, if this is all I am now, then I guess I'll have to decide if I can love a monster. The word love hung in the air between them. Too big, too soon, but also somehow inevitable. Because there was something between them. Had always been something. And now it was growing into something neither could control. We shouldn't. Seok-won said quietly. You deserve someone better. Someone clean. Maybe, but that's not what I want. What do you want? Keisha looked at him for a long moment. I want to understand why I can't stop thinking about you. Why even knowing what you are, what you've done, I still feel safe with you. I want time to figure out if this is real or if I'm just clinging to a childhood memory. And if it's real, then I guess we figure out how to make this work. Somehow. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even a promise. But it was possibility, and that was more than Seok-won had dared hope for. The SUV continued north, carrying them away from the violence and chaos, toward something uncertain but not hopeless. Behind them, Jung-ho followed in a second vehicle, a silent guardian ensuring no threats followed. And in his pocket, Seok-won carried a phone with proof of everything Park had done. Evidence that would satisfy both his organization and Keisha's need for justice. Park's empire would be dismantled, his people absorbed or eliminated, and the threat would be ended. But more importantly, Keisha was safe. Carol was safe. And Seok-won had kept his promise. Now he just had to figure out how to keep the next one. The unspoken promise that he'd be worthy of the second chance she was offering him. Even if he had no idea how to be anything other than what his father made him. The warehouse burned behind them, smoke rising into the New York night sky. Another problem solved with violence and money, the only currencies that mattered in his world. But as Keisha's hand found his in the darkness, squeezing once before letting go, Seok-won wondered if maybe there was a third currency he'd forgotten about. Hope. And for the first time in 15 years, he had some. The safe house in Connecticut was nothing like Keisha expected. When Seok-won said safe house, she'd imagined something austere and utilitarian, concrete walls and minimal furniture. Instead, they pulled up to a sprawling estate hidden behind tall gates and mature trees. The main house was a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, lit from within by warm, golden light. This is a safe house? she asked as they climbed out of the SUV. I don't believe in suffering unnecessarily, Seok-won replied, his hand finding the small of her back as he guided her toward the entrance. The touch was possessive, claiming, and sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. Unwelcome because she shouldn't be reacting to him this way. Not after watching him order a man's execution without hesitation. Not after seeing the cold calculation in his eyes as he threatened Park's family. But her body didn't seem to care about what she should or shouldn't feel. It only knew that his presence made her feel safe in a way nothing else did. Carol walked ahead of them, escorted by Jung-ho, who was explaining the security features of the property with professional courtesy. Min-jae had already disappeared inside to do a final sweep. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, open floor plan, furniture that managed to be both luxurious and comfortable. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of a private lake, the water reflecting moonlight like scattered diamonds. There are 6 bedrooms upstairs, Seok-won said, addressing Carol. Take whichever one you prefer. Jung-ho will show you where everything is. There's a first aid kit in each bathroom, and I've arranged for a doctor to check you over in the morning. Carol looked like she wanted to say something, her eyes moving between Seok-won and Keisha with an expression that was equal parts concern and resignation. But she just nodded, following Jung-ho up the curved staircase, leaving Keisha alone with Seok-won in the vast living room. The silence stretched between them, weighted with everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Keisha was suddenly, acutely aware that she was still wearing her work uniform, that she smelled like the restaurant and fierce sweat from the warehouse. Her that she looked absolutely nothing like the kind of woman who belonged in a place like this. You should clean up, Seok-won said, but he made no move to step away from her. His hand was still on her lower back, a warm pressure that felt both comforting and dangerous. There are clothes upstairs, everything you need. You planned for this, Keisha said, not quite a question. I've been planning for you since the moment I saw you in that restaurant. His voice was low, intimate. The moment I recognized my necklace around your neck and realized the universe had given me a second chance. A second chance at what? At keeping my promise. At having you in my life. At claiming what should have been mine 15 years ago if my father's men hadn't taken me away. The possessiveness in his words should have alarmed her. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in her belly. I'm not something to be claimed. Aren't you? His hand slid up her spine, settling at the nape of her neck. The gesture was intimate, controlling. You've been wearing my necklace for 15 years, Keisha, keeping me close to your heart even when you didn't know where I was. That means something. It means I valued a childhood friendship. It means you're mine. His thumb traced the sensitive skin behind her ear. You just didn't know it yet. Keisha's breath caught. She should pull away, establish boundaries, do any of the sensible things a rational person would do. But there was nothing rational about the way her body responded to his touch, the way her pulse raced when he looked at her with those dark, intense eyes. Seok-won, go upstairs, Keisha. Clean up. Put on the clothes I bought for you. His voice dropped to a near whisper. And then come back down here so we can talk about what happens next. It wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in velvet, and Keisha found herself obeying without conscious thought. She climbed the stairs on shaking legs, hyper-aware of his gaze following her until she disappeared from view. The second-floor hallway was long and elegant, lined with doors. She chose the one Jung-ho had indicated earlier and stepped inside. The bedroom was stunning. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, covered in what looked like Egyptian cotton sheets in deep charcoal gray. A sitting area by the windows offered views of the lake. And through an open door, she glimpsed a bathroom that featured both a walk-in shower and a deep soaking tub. On the bed, she found several shopping bags from high-end boutiques. Inside were clothes in exactly her size. Soft loungewear, elegant casual pieces, and to her shock, Delicate lingerie in silk and lace. Everything carefully selected. Nothing cheap or tasteless. He'd done this. Prepared all of this before bringing her here. Before knowing she'd need it. The level of planning was both impressive and terrifying in its implications. Keisha picked up a set of black silk pajamas, if you could call them that. The shorts were modest enough, but the camisole had thin straps and a neckline that would show more than she was comfortable with. Still, it was better than sleeping in her work uniform. She stripped off the clothes that smelled like violence and fear, leaving them in a pile on the floor. The shower called to her, and she answered gratefully. The water was perfect, hot enough to ease the tension from her muscles, the pressure strong enough to make her groan with relief. She found expensive products that smelled like vanilla and amber, and she used them liberally, scrubbing away the warehouse, the fear, the feeling of Park's men grabbing her. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a plush robe, she felt almost human again. She dried off and reluctantly put on the silk pajamas Seok-won had provided. The fabric felt sinful against her clean skin, cool and smooth and far too intimate for comfort. She looked at herself in the mirror. The camisole showed more of her curves than she usually allowed, the neckline dipping low enough to reveal the upper swells of her breasts. The shorts hit high on her thighs. She looked like she was dressed for seduction, not sleep. But it was this or the work uniform, and she couldn't bring herself to put that back on. Keisha checked on Carol first, finding her aunt already asleep in one of the other bedrooms, her face peaceful despite the bruises. Jung-ho had left medical supplies on the nightstand and a glass of water within reach. Whatever else could be said about Seok-won's world, he took care of the people under his protection. Taking a deep breath, Keisha headed back downstairs. She found Seok-won in what appeared to be a study, standing by the windows with a glass of whiskey in his hand. He'd removed his jacket and tie, unbuttoned the top buttons of his shirt. He looked dangerous and beautiful and completely overwhelming. He turned when she entered, and his eyes darkened as they traveled over her body in the silk pajamas. "Come here." Again, not a request. Keisha's feet moved before her brain caught up, carrying her across the room until she stood within arm's reach. "That's better," he said softly, setting down his glass. "I can see you properly now. You're the one who bought these clothes. I know exactly what I bought, and exactly how you'd look in them." His gaze was heated, possessive. "Do you have any idea how long I've wanted to see you like this? Clean and safe and wearing something I provided?" That's... Keisha searched for words. "That's a very specific fantasy. I have many fantasies about you. That's one of the tamer ones." He reached out, his fingers finding the silver necklace where it rested against her skin. "This looks right on you. It always has. You made it when you were 9 years old. And even then, I knew you were mine to protect. Mine to care for." His fingers traced from the necklace up to her collarbone, her throat, her jaw. I just didn't understand what that meant yet. Keisha's pulse hammered under his touch. "And now?" "Now I understand perfectly." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "You're not just someone I want to protect, Keisha. You're someone I want to possess, to claim, to keep so close that nothing and no one can ever take you from me again." "That's obsessive." "Yes." He said it without shame, without apology. "I'm obsessed with you. I have been since I was 9 years old, and you sang to me in the dark. The only difference now is that I have the power to act on that obsession. And if I don't want to be possessed, then you'll tell me no, and I'll have to find other ways to convince you." His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back. "But I don't think you want to say no. I think you feel this too. This pull between us. This inevitability." He was right, and Keisha hated how transparent she was. "This is happening too fast. We've known each other for 23 years. How is that too fast? We were children then. And now we're adults who can acknowledge what's always been between us." His grip tightened slightly in her hair, not painful, but controlling. Stop fighting this, Keisha. Stop pretending you don't want me as much as I want you. Want and should are different things. Fuck should. The profanity sounded harsh in his cultured voice. I've spent my entire life doing what I should, being what my father wanted, building what was expected. For once, I'm taking what I want. And I want you. Before Keisha could respond, his mouth was on hers. The kiss was nothing like she expected. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was consuming, demanding, a claiming that left no room for doubt about his intentions. His hand in her hair held her in place while his other arm banded around her waist, pulling her flush against his body. Keisha gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss with a skill that made her knees weak. He tasted like whiskey and something darker, something uniquely him. His body was hard against hers, all muscle and controlled power, and she could feel the evidence of his desire pressing against her stomach. She should push him away, should establish boundaries, should do literally anything other than kiss him back. But her hands were fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer, and her mouth was opening to his invasion like she'd been waiting for this her entire life. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His eyes were nearly black with desire, his control visibly fraying. "Tell me no," he said, his voice rough. "Tell me you don't want this and I'll walk away. I'll give you space and time and anything else you need. But if you don't say no, Keisha, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to take you upstairs and show you exactly how obsessed I am. How thoroughly I plan to claim you." Keisha looked at him. At this man who'd been the scared boy she protected, who'd become someone dangerous and powerful, who looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. She should say no. Should be sensible and cautious and all the things a smart woman would be. But when had her life ever been about should? "I'm not saying no," she whispered. Something fierce and triumphant flashed in Seok-won's eyes. "Say it clearly. I need to hear you say it. I want this. I want you." The admission felt like surrender and liberation all at once. Even though it's crazy and too fast and probably a terrible idea, it's the best idea you've ever had. His mouth found hers again, this kiss even more demanding than the last. "Mine," he murmured against her lips. "Finally mine." He lifted her easily, and Keisha wrapped her legs around his waist instinctively. He carried her through the house, his mouth never leaving hers, navigating the stairs without breaking stride. They ended up in what must be the master bedroom, larger than the one she'd been in earlier, dominated by a massive bed with dark sheets. Seok-won set her down on the edge of the mattress, standing between her legs, looking down at her with such raw hunger it made her shiver. "I've imagined this," he said, his hands sliding up her thighs. "Every possible way I could have you. Every sound you'd make. Every way I could make you mine." "That's..." Keisha's voice failed as his hands reached the hem of her silk shorts. "Obsessive? Yes. I believe we've established that." His fingers traced patterns on her inner thighs, maddeningly close to where she was starting to ache for his touch. "But you're going to learn to love my obsession, Keisha. You're going to crave it the way I crave you." He leaned down, his mouth finding the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder. "I'm going to learn every inch of you. Every spot that makes you gasp. Every touch that makes you tremble. And then I'm going to use that knowledge to ruin you for anyone else." Keisha's head fell back, giving him better access. "Confident, aren't you?" "When it comes to you? Absolutely." His teeth grazed her skin, making her gasp. "You're mine, Keisha. You've been mine since you were 8 years old and sang to me in the dark. You just didn't know it yet." His hand slid higher, and Keisha's breath caught. This was really happening. She was really going to... A sharp knock on the door made them both freeze. "Boss." Jung-ho's voice, urgent but respectful. We have a situation. It's urgent. Seok-won cursed in Korean, something that sounded extremely creative. His forehead dropped to Keisha's shoulder, and she could feel the tension thrumming through his body. "This better be life or death," he called out, his voice strained. "It involves Park's organization and Choi Sung-min. You need to see this now." Another string of Korean profanity. Seok-won pulled back, his eyes meeting Keisha's with visible frustration. "I'm sorry, I have to—" "I know." Keisha's voice was shaky but understanding. "Go. Handle it. This isn't over." His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her swollen lower lip. "When I come back, we're finishing this conversation. And everything that comes after. Promises, promises. Not a promise. A guarantee." He kissed her once more, hard and possessive, then forced himself to step back. "Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." Then he was gone, leaving Keisha alone in the master bedroom, her body still humming with desire, her mind reeling from how quickly she'd surrendered to him. She touched her lips, he's still tingling from his kisses. This was insane. 24 hours ago, she didn't even know he existed as an adult. Now she was ready to give herself to him completely. But somehow it didn't feel rushed. It felt inevitable. Like every moment of her life had been leading to this, to him finding her again, to them colliding in a way that couldn't be denied or delayed. Keisha lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to calm her racing heart. Through the door, she could hear raised voices downstairs, Seok-won and Jung-ho discussing something in rapid Korean. Whatever the situation was, it sounded serious. She should probably be more concerned about the danger, about the fact that she was caught up in a Mafia war she didn't understand. But all she could think about was the promise in Seok-won's eyes, the heat in his touch. The way he'd called her his like, it was the most natural thing in the world. And the terrifying realization that she wanted to be his. Wanted it with an intensity that should have scared her, but instead felt like coming home. The voices downstairs grew louder, more urgent. Keisha sat up, instinct telling her something was wrong. She moved to the door, pressing her ear against it. "Can't be trusted," Jung-ho was saying. "The information is too convenient, too perfectly timed." "What are you suggesting?" Seok-won's voice was hard. "I'm suggesting we've been played. Park's death, Choi showing up, all of it. Someone is orchestrating this." "Who?" "I don't know. But whoever they are, they know about the girl. They know she matters to you. And they're using that knowledge." Silence. Then Seok-won. "Increase security. I want eyes on every approach to this property. And get me everything you can find on Choi's movements over the past month. If he's working with someone, I want to know who." "Already on it. But boss, you need to consider the possibility that the girl herself is—" "Careful." Seok-won's voice dropped to something deadly. "Very careful with what you say next." "I'm just saying we should verify. She's not involved. She's a victim in this, just like she was when we were children. And anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me personally." More silence. Then Jung-ho, more carefully. "Understood. I'll increase security and keep investigating Choi." Footsteps approaching the door. Keisha barely had time to step back before it opened, revealing Seok-won. His expression was troubled, but it softened when he saw her. "You should be resting." "I heard voices. Sounded serious." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "It's handled. Just some complications with Park's organization fracturing. Nothing you need to worry about." "Jung-ho thinks someone is orchestrating things, using me against you." Seok-won's jaw tightened. "You were listening." "Hard not to when you're shouting in the hallway." Keisha crossed her arms. "Is it true? Is someone using me as a pawn?" "Possibly, probably." He moved closer. "But that changes nothing. You're still under my protection. You're still mine to keep safe." And if I'm dangerous to you? If keeping me close is what they want? Then they've miscalculated. His hands found her waist, pulling her against him. Because I don't care about the strategic implications. I don't care if it's a trap or a manipulation or a carefully orchestrated plan. All I care about is that you're here, you're safe, and you're mine. That's not rational. Nothing about what I feel for you is rational. His mouth found hers again, kissing her with bruising intensity. It's obsessive and possessive and completely irrational. And I don't care. I've spent my entire life being rational, being strategic, being what my father wanted. With you, I just want to feel. Keisha melted into him, her body responding even as her mind tried to maintain some sense of caution. We should talk about this. About what Young-ho said. Later. Right now, I need to finish what we started. His hand slid under the silk camisole, finding bare skin. Unless you want me to stop? No. The word came out breathless. Don't stop. Good. Because I don't think I could even if you asked. His mouth moved to her neck, her shoulder, the sensitive skin above her collarbone. I've waited 15 years for this. For you, and I'm done waiting. He lifted her again, laying her back on the bed with surprising gentleness given the hunger in his eyes. He stood over her for a moment, just looking, his gaze traveling over her body with such obvious desire, it made her feel powerful and vulnerable all at once. Beautiful, he murmured, even more beautiful than I imagined. Then he was covering her body with his weight pressing her into the mattress, his mouth finding hers again in a kiss that left no room for doubt about his intentions. Keisha's hands found their way under his shirt, exploring the hard planes of his chest, the muscles that spoke of violence and power. He groaned against her mouth, the sound vibrating through both of them. Touch me, he commanded. I want your hands on me. Want to feel you claiming me the way I'm claiming you. She obeyed, growing bolder, mapping the contours of his body while he did the same to her. His hands were everywhere, her waist, her ribs, higher, and each touch felt like a brand, marking her as his. The silk camisole disappeared somewhere along the way. Keisha didn't remember him removing it, only that suddenly there was nothing between his mouth and her skin, and he was showing her exactly how thoroughly he planned to learn every inch of her. Seok-won. His name came out as a gasp as his mouth found sensitive skin. Say it again. His voice was rough with desire. Say my name. Let me hear you. Seok-won. Louder this time, less controlled. That's it. That's what I want. You, falling apart for me. Because of me. His hands gripped her hips, holding her in place. Mine, Keisha. Say it. Yours. The admission should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like freedom. I'm yours. Something fierce and primal flashed in his eyes. Finally you understand. He claimed her mouth again, the kiss desperate and demanding, and Keisha kissed him back with equal intensity, giving as good as she got, refusing to be passive in her own seduction. This was happening. They were really doing this, and Keisha couldn't bring herself to care about the consequences, the complications, the danger. All she could focus on was the man above her, the way he touched her like she was precious and claimed her like she was a prize he'd fought for and won. The way he looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, like she was his obsession. And she was starting to think she might be okay with that. The night stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities and promises and the inevitable conclusion of 15 years of searching. And for the first time since walking into that restaurant and seeing him again, Keisha stopped questioning whether this was right or wrong, too fast or too slow. She just let herself feel, let herself want. Let herself be claimed by the man who'd promised to always protect her, even if he'd become someone dangerous in the process. Maybe especially because of that. because she was starting to understand that loving someone didn't mean they were safe or simple or easy to understand. Sometimes it meant they were complicated and dangerous and absolutely wrong for you in every practical way, but right in all the ways that mattered. Keisha woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the unfamiliar weight of an arm around her waist. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. This wasn't her cramped apartment in Queens, wasn't the threadbare sheets she'd bought on sale 3 years ago. Then memory crashed back. The warehouse, park, Seok-won, last night. Heat flooded her face as fragments returned, his mouth on her skin, his hands learning every curve. The way he'd taken his time, mapping her body like he was memorizing territory he planned to claim over and over again. The way she'd fallen apart under his touch, crying out his name while he watched her with those dark, intense eyes. The way he'd held her afterward, his fingers tracing the silver necklace he'd made her 23 years ago, telling her she was beautiful. She was his. She was everything. "You're thinking too loud." Seok-won's voice rumbled against her ear. His arm tightened around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "I can feel you spiraling." "I'm not spiraling." "You are. You're trying to rationalize what happened last night. Probably listing all the reasons it was a mistake." His lips found the sensitive spot behind her ear. "Stop. It wasn't a mistake. It was inevitable." Keisha turned in his arms to face him. In the morning light, he looked younger, less dangerous. His hair was mussed from sleep and her fingers running through it, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "We barely know each other," she said, but the protest sounded weak even to her own ears. "We've known each other our entire lives. We just had a 23-year interruption." His hand came up to cup her face. "And I know you, Keisha. I know you take your coffee black because you can't afford to waste money on extras. I know you work doubles when your roommate can't make rent. I know you sing when you're nervous and you touch that necklace whenever you're scared. I know you. You had me investigated. Yes. And I'd do it again. No apology, no shame. I needed to know everything about you. Where you lived, how you spent your time, who mattered to you. That's how I protect what's mine." There was that word again. His. It should bother her more than it did. "What happens now?" she asked instead. "Now you decide what you want. Your normal life back, apartment, job, everything. I'll make sure you're financially secure, that you never struggle again." His thumb traced her lower lip. "Or you stay with me. Come to Seoul. Be part of my world. It won't be easy or safe, but you'll never be alone again." "That's not really a fair choice." "Why not?" "Because you're asking me to choose between safety and you. Between the life I know and whatever this is. I'm asking you to choose between existing and living, between struggling alone and being cherished, between hiding who you are and embracing what you could be." His voice dropped. "I'm asking you to choose me, Keisha. Choose us. Choose this thing between us that's always been there, waiting." Before Keisha could respond, her phone, which someone had apparently retrieved from the restaurant and placed on the nightstand, began buzzing insistently. She reached for it, noting 15 missed calls from her roommate Sarah. "I should answer it," Seok-won said, though his expression suggested he'd rather throw the phone out the window. Keisha swiped to answer. "Sarah? I'm so sorry. I should have called." "Keisha, thank God. Where are you? You didn't come home last night, and your manager from the restaurant called asking if you were okay because you never showed up for your shift, and apparently there was some kind of incident in the kitchen yesterday and—" "Sarah, slow down. I'm fine. I'm safe." "Where are you?" Keisha glanced at Seok-won. "I'm with someone. I'll explain everything when I see you." "With someone?" "Keisha, you never stay out all night. What's going on?" "It's complicated, but I promise I'm okay." "Better than okay, actually." A pause. Then Sarah's voice, suspicious and curious. Did you meet someone? Is this a guy? Yes. And before you ask, yes, he's why I didn't come home. And no, I'm not going to give you details over the phone. Oh my God. Keisha Thompson actually had a one-night stand. The world is ending. It's not. Keisha stopped, realizing she had no idea what to call this. It's not a one-night stand. Then what is it? I don't know yet, but I'll tell you everything later. I need to figure some things out first. They said their goodbyes and Keisha set down the phone. Seok-won was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Your roommate sounds protective. She is. We've been living together for 3 years. She's like a sister to me. Good. You should have people who care about you. His fingers traced idle patterns on her bare shoulder. Though I plan to be the most important person in your life very soon. Confident. Realistic. He pulled her closer. I told you last night, I'm keeping you. That means I need to meet the people who matter to you. Your roommate, your manager, anyone else important in your life. You want to meet Sarah? I want to be part of your world the way you're becoming part of mine. That means meeting your people, understanding your life, showing them I'm serious about you. The sincerity in his voice made Keisha's chest tight. You really mean that? I don't say things I don't mean. He kissed her softly. Now, I need to handle some business this morning. You should go home, check on your roommate, reassure her you haven't been kidnapped by a psychopath. Have I? Probably. But a psychopath who's madly in love with you? So it evens out. Keisha laughed despite herself. That's not how that works. Isn't it? He smiled and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. Get dressed. Jung-ho will drive you home. I have some meetings I can't avoid, but I'll see you tonight. Tonight? Dinner? Somewhere nice. I'm taking you on an actual date. His hand slid into her hair. Because despite what happened last night, I want to do this right. Court you properly. Show you I'm not just interested in your body, though that's definitely a factor. How romantic. I'm new at this. Give me time to figure out the romance part. He kissed her again, deeper this time. But I promise I'll make it worth your while. An hour later, Keisha was in an SUV heading back to Queens, and wearing clothes Seok-won had provided and feeling like she'd stepped into an alternate reality. Jung-ho drove in professional silence, though she caught him glancing at her in the rearview mirror occasionally. You can ask, Keisha said finally. Whatever you're wondering. Jung-ho's expression didn't change. It's not my place to ask questions about the boss's personal life. But you have opinions. Everyone has opinions. Mine don't matter. They matter to Seok-won. You're his head of security, his right hand. That got a slight smile. You've been paying attention. Hard not to when you're always there, watching everything. Keisha leaned forward. So what do you think? About me and him? Jung-ho was quiet for a long moment. I think the boss has never let anyone close before. Not in the 10 years I've worked for him. He's always been focused, controlled, emotional distance from everyone. And now? Now he's reckless, impulsive, starting wars over you, making decisions based on emotion instead of strategy. Jung-ho met her eyes in the mirror. It should worry me. It does worry me, but I've also never seen him happy before. Not really, so maybe reckless isn't such a bad thing. The honesty surprised her. You think I make him happy? I think you make him human. Whether that's good or bad for his empire remains to be seen. They pulled up to her building. Jung-ho got out, scanning the street before opening her door. I'll be nearby. If you need anything, call this number. He handed her a card with a single phone number on it. You're staying? Boss's orders. You're under protection now. Get used to it. Keisha climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, her mind still processing everything. Last night, she'd slept with a man she'd known for less than a week. This morning, she had a bodyguard. Tonight, she had a date with a crime boss who'd carved her a necklace 23 years ago. Her life had become surreal. Sarah was waiting in their tiny living room, laptop open, clearly working on her thesis. She looked up when Keisha entered, her eyes widening. Oh my God, you're doing the walk of shame. Keisha Thompson is doing the walk of shame. It's not a walk of shame if I'm not ashamed. Details. Now, who is he? Where did you meet him? Is he hot? Please tell me he's hot. Keisha sank onto their secondhand couch. His name is Seok-won. We actually knew each other as kids. And yes, he's very attractive. Knew each other as kids? Like childhood friends? Something like that. We were in the same orphanage before I was placed with Carol. Sarah's expression softened. You never talk about the orphanage. Because there's not much to talk about. It was difficult. But Seok-won was there. He was my friend. My only friend, really. Keisha touched the necklace. He made me this before his family took him away. Wait, that necklace you always wear? The one you said was important? He carved it from a spoon handle when we were kids. Gave it to me as a promise that he'd always protect me. Keisha smiled at the memory. I never thought I'd see him again. But a few days ago, he walked into the restaurant where I work, and everything changed. This is like something out of a romance novel, and the childhood friends reunited after years apart. Sarah leaned forward. So what's he like now? What does he do? This was the complicated part. Keisha couldn't exactly tell Sarah that Seok-won ran a criminal organization. He's an international business, imports and exports, primarily based in Seoul. Rich? Very. And he's interested in you? Like, seriously interested? He says he is. Says he's been looking for me for years. Keisha met her friend's eyes. Sarah, I know this is fast. I know it seems crazy, but when I'm with him, I feel alive. Like I've been sleepwalking through life, and suddenly I'm awake. That's beautiful and also slightly concerning. Sarah closed her laptop. But if he makes you happy, I'm happy. Just be careful, okay? Rich guys who sweep in with grand gestures can also disappear just as fast. He's not going anywhere. Keisha searched for words. He's intense, focused. When he wants something, he doesn't give up. And he wants you? Yes, very much yes. Sarah grinned. Then I definitely need to meet this guy. When's he taking you out again? Tonight. Dinner. Ooh, fancy. You need to borrow my good dress. The black one that makes your assets look amazing. They spent the afternoon like normal. Sarah working on her thesis while Keisha caught up on laundry and tried to process the whirlwind of the past few days. It felt surreal, this normalcy after the violence and intensity of being with Seok-won. But it also felt good. Grounding. A reminder that she had a life outside of his world, people who cared about her, routines that mattered. Around 4, her phone buzzed. A message from Seok-won. Car will pick you up at 7. Wear something that makes you feel beautiful, though you'd be beautiful in anything. Keisha smiled at the screen, warmth flooding through her. Another message. I've been thinking about last night all day. About how you felt in my arms. How you said my name. I can't wait to see you again. Heat pooled low in her belly. She typed back. Careful. Keep talking like that and we might not make it to dinner. His response was immediate. Don't tempt me. I'm already struggling to focus on this meeting. All I can think about is you. Good. Suffer. Cruel woman. I'll remember that tonight. Promises, promises. Not promises, guarantees. Keisha was grinning like an idiot when Sarah appeared in her doorway. You're texting him, aren't you? You have that dopey smile. I don't have a dopey smile. You absolutely do. It's adorable and kind of sickening. Sarah flopped onto Keisha's bed. So, this guy. Is it serious? Like, potential serious? Keisha thought about Seok-won's intensity, the way he looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. The way he'd said he was keeping her, like it was a fact rather than a hope. Yeah, she said quietly. I think it might be. Good. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are. Sarah sat up. Now let's get you ready to knock his socks off. At exactly 7, Keisha's phone buzzed. I'm downstairs. She took one last look in the mirror. Sarah's black dress fit perfectly, hugging her curves without being too revealing. She'd left her hair down, natural curls framing her face. Minimal makeup, just enough to enhance. The silver necklace rested against her collarbone, right where it belonged. You look stunning, Sarah said from behind her. He's going to lose his mind. That's the plan. Downstairs, Keisha found not the SUV she expected, but a sleek black sports car. Seok-won stood beside it, and her breath caught. He wore a perfectly tailored suit in charcoal gray. No tie, the top button of his shirt undone. His hair was styled back, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face. He looked dangerous and elegant and completely devastating. When he saw her, his expression shifted. Heat and appreciation and something deeper that made her pulse race. You're beautiful, he said, closing the distance between them. His hand found her waist, pulling her close. Absolutely stunning. You clean up pretty well yourself. I try. He opened the car door for her. Ready? Where are we going? You'll see. They drove through Manhattan as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Seok-won's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. How was your day? He asked. Surprisingly normal. Sarah grilled me about you. I did laundry. Avoided thinking about how crazy my life has become. And did it work? The avoiding? Not even a little bit. Keisha looked at him. How about you? What kind of meetings keep a crime boss busy? He smiled at her directness. Legitimate business, actually. I have several legal enterprises, real estate, tech investments, import-export. The illegal activities fund the legal ones, which then generate clean money. Money laundering. Strategic financial planning. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I'm not proud of everything I do, Keisha, but I'm honest about it. My world is complicated, often violent, definitely illegal. If that's something you can't accept, tell me now. And if I can accept it? Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that choice. They pulled up to a building Keisha didn't recognize, not a restaurant, but what looked like a residential high-rise. Seok-won led her inside, past a doorman who nodded respectfully, into an elevator that required a keycard to operate. Where are we? Keisha asked as they ascended. Somewhere private. I wanted tonight to be just us. No crowds, no interruptions. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment. I hope that's okay. The space was breathtaking, modern and masculine, all clean lines and expensive furnishings. But what caught Keisha's attention was the table set by the windows, candles flickering, the city spread out below like a carpet of lights. You cooked? She asked, seeing the covered dishes. God, no. I'd poison us both. I had it catered. He helped her out of her jacket. But I wanted to serve you myself. Wanted tonight to be about us, not staff hovering. Keisha felt something in her chest expand. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, had arranged an intimate dinner just for the two of them. Had thought about what would make her comfortable, what would feel special. This is perfect, she said softly. You haven't tasted the food yet. I don't mean the food. I mean this. You. All of it. Seok-won's expression softened. He pulled out her chair, and once she was seated, he poured wine. Something red and probably expensive. I realized today that I've done this all backwards, he said, taking the seat across from her. I made you mine before properly courting you, claimed you before earning you. So tonight is me trying to do it right. You don't have to earn me. You already have me. Maybe, but you deserve to be wooed, romanced, treated like you're precious. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Because you are. To me, you're everything. Dinner was incredible. Some kind of Mediterranean cuisine with flavors that exploded on her tongue. They talked about everything and nothing. His childhood in Seoul after leaving the orphanage, her years bouncing between foster homes, the paths that had led them to this moment. Do you remember the first time we met? Seok-won asked, refilling her wine. At the orphanage? You were crying in the corner during lunch. The other kids were making fun of you because you didn't speak much English yet. And you sat down next to me, shared your food even though you barely had enough, told the other kids to leave me alone. You looked so scared, so lost. I couldn't just walk away. That's who you are, someone who sees people hurting and helps, even when it costs you. His eyes were intense across the table. That's why I fell in love with you when we were children. And it's why I'm in love with you now. Keisha's breath caught. You keep saying that you love me. Because it's true. I know it's fast by normal standards, but nothing about us has ever been normal. He stood, moving around the table to pull her up into his arms. I loved you when I was 9, and you were the only light in a dark place. I loved you through 15 years of searching. And I love you now, standing here, finally having you in my arms. Seok-won, you don't have to say it back. Not until you're ready. But I need you to know it. Need you to understand that this isn't casual for me. This is everything. Keisha looked up at him, at this man who'd been a scared child, who'd become someone powerful and dangerous, who looked at her like she hung the moon. I love you too, she said, the words coming easily now. I think I started falling the moment you walked into that restaurant. Maybe even before that. Maybe I've been waiting 23 years to fall in love with you again. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, his hands in her hair, her body pressed against his. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. Stay with me tonight, he murmured, and tomorrow, and every night after. Don't go back to that apartment. Don't go back to struggling and working yourself to exhaustion. Stay here, with me, and let me take care of you. Seok-won, I know what you're going to say, that it's too fast, too much, too soon. But Keisha, I've waited 23 years to have you back in my life. I'm not wasting any more time. I want you here, in my home, in my bed, in my life. Completely. What about my job? My roommate? My life? Quit the restaurant. I'll make sure you're financially stable. Your roommate can stay in the apartment rent-free, or I'll help her find somewhere better. As for your life, he cupped her face. Build a new one. With me. Here or in Seoul or wherever you want. Just build it with me. It was insane. Reckless. Moving way too fast. But it also felt right in a way nothing else ever had. Okay, Keisha heard herself say. Okay, I'll stay. The smile that broke across Seok-won's face was brilliant and boyish and completely transformative. He swept her up, spinning her around, and Keisha found herself laughing, dizzy with happiness and wine and the sheer impossibility of this moment. When he set her down, his mouth found hers again. This kiss different. Celebratory, joyful, full of promise. I'm going to make you so happy, he said against her lips. I'm going to give you everything you've ever wanted and things you didn't know you needed. I'm going to worship you and cherish you and drive you absolutely crazy. I'm counting on it. He carried her to the bedroom, because apparently that was his thing. and Keisha wrapped herself around him, ready to lose herself in this beautiful madness they were creating together. The night stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities and promises. And for the first time in her life, Keisha felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, in the arms of the boy who'd promised to protect her, who'd grown into a man determined to keep that promise, no matter what it cost. The next morning, Keisha woke wrapped in expensive sheets and Seok-won's arms. Sunlight streamed through windows she hadn't bothered to close the night before, and she could hear the city waking up below. "Good morning," Seok-won's voice rumbled against her ear. "How do you feel about breaking some more rules today?" "What kind of rules?" "The kind where you call your restaurant and quit, where you tell your roommate you're moving out, where you officially enter my world with no safety net and no way back." Keisha turned to face him. "You make it sound so ominous." "I'm being honest. Once you do this, once you fully commit to being with me, there's no going back to your normal life. You'll be known as mine, protected by my name and endangered by it in equal measure. People will look at you differently, treat you differently. Your safety will always be a concern. Your freedom will always have limits. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're choosing." His hand cupped her face. "I want you with me. God, I want that more than anything. But I need you to choose it with open eyes." Keisha thought about her cramped apartment, her exhausting job, her life of barely scraping by. Thought about the past few days. The danger, yes, but also the intensity. The feeling of being fully alive. The way Seok-won looked at her like she was precious. "I choose you," she said firmly. "Open eyes, full understanding. I choose this life with you." "No regrets when things get hard?" "I'll probably have lots of regrets, but not about this. Not about you." He kissed her softly. "Then let's go burn down your old life and build a new one." They spent the morning doing exactly that. Keisha called the restaurant, gave her 2 weeks' notice, which her manager tried to talk her out of before finally accepting. She called Sarah, explained she was moving in with Seok-won, endured 20 minutes of concerned questions and excited squealing. By noon, her old life was officially ending, and her new one was beginning. "There's something I need to tell you," Seok-won said as they sat in his living room, Keisha curled against his side. "Something about my family." "Your father?" "My sister. Half-sister, technically. Minseo." His jaw tightened. "She runs her own organization, independent from mine. We have an agreement to stay out of each other's territories and business." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's in New York. Has been for years, and she's going to want to meet you, to assess whether you're a threat or an asset." "That doesn't sound ominous at all." "Minseo is—" He searched for words. "Complicated, brilliant, ruthless. We're not close. My father pitted us against each other growing up, and we've maintained a professional distance as adults. But she's still family, and she'll want to know who I've brought into my life." "Should I be worried?" "Probably. But I'll be with you. And Minseo knows better than to threaten what's mine." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "Speaking of which, she wants to meet. Today. Says it's urgent." "What does that mean?" "It means she already knows about you, which means she's been watching us." His arm tightened around Keisha. "I'm sorry. I'd hoped to ease you into this part of my world, but Minseo doesn't wait for anyone." An hour later, they sat in an upscale cafe in Midtown. Seok-won had positioned them at a corner table, Young-ho nearby but unobtrusive. Keisha wore clothes Seok-won had bought her. Designer pieces that fit perfectly and probably cost more than her monthly rent used to. She felt out of place and uncertain, but Seok-won's hand in hers grounded her. "She's here," he said quietly. Keisha looked up to see a woman approaching their table. She was stunning, Korean, late 30s, with sharp features and cold, assessing eyes. She moved with lethal grace, every step calculated. She wore a white pantsuit that probably cost thousands, her hair in a sleek ponytail. She looked like money and power and danger all wrapped in elegant packaging. "Brother," she said in perfect English with just a hint of a Korean accent. "It's been a while." Min-seo. Seok-won didn't stand, didn't release Keisha's hand. "I wasn't expecting you in New York." "I'm always in New York. You just don't usually announce your presence so loudly." Her gaze shifted to Keisha. "So this is the woman who's made my little brother forget 23 years of our father's training." "Keisha, this is Min-seo." "Min-seo. Keisha." Charmed. Min-seo slid into the seat across from them without invitation. "You're very beautiful. I can see why he's infatuated." "It's not infatuation," Seok-won said sharply. "No? What would you call it then? Love?" Min-seo's smile was cold. How quaint. Father would be rolling in his grave. Father is dead. His opinions no longer matter. Don't they? You're running his empire, living by his rules, using his methods. Min-seo's gaze never left Keisha. Tell me, does she know what you do? What you've done? The things you've ordered in the name of protecting your territory? She knows enough. Does she? Does she know about the family in Queens you displaced last month? The father who couldn't pay his debts, so you took his business, his home, everything he'd built? Does she know what happened to him when he tried to fight back? Keisha felt Seok-won tense beside her. That's business. He knew the risks. He had 3 children. The youngest was 6. Min-seo's voice was casual, conversational. They're in a shelter now. The wife works 2 jobs trying to keep them fed. All because this man you love needed to send a message about paying debts. Min-seo... Seok-won's voice was dangerous. I'm simply providing context. Your girlfriend should know who she's sleeping with. What kind of man he really is. Keisha found her voice. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Trying to turn me against him, trying to make me see him as a monster. Keisha met Min-seo's cold gaze. What do you get out of it? Min-seo smiled, and it was genuine this time. Smart. Good. You'll need that intelligence to survive in this world. She leaned forward. I'm not trying to turn you against him. I'm testing you. Seeing if you're strong enough to handle the truth of what he is. What we all are. And if I'm not? Then you'll leave. Break his heart. Make him vulnerable. And enemies will exploit that vulnerability. Min-seo's expression hardened. But if you stay, if you accept him despite everything, then you become the most dangerous weapon anyone could use against him. Because now he has something to lose. You wouldn't have to do anything. Just exist. Just be the thing he loves more than his empire. Min-seo sat back. That's why I'm here. To make sure you understand what your presence in his life means. Not just for him, but for everyone around him. Seok-won's hand tightened on Keisha's. Enough. You've made your point. Have I? Min-seo pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. On the screen was a photo. Keisha and Seok-won leaving the penthouse that morning, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling. This photo has been seen by every major organization on the East Coast. They all know now. Know that Kang Seok-won has found someone he cares about. Someone who matters enough to change his patterns, his behavior, and his priorities. She swiped to another photo, Keisha at her apartment building. Then another, at the restaurant. Another with Sarah. They're watching you. All of them. Waiting to see how they can use you. Some will try to kill you, eliminate the distraction. Others will try to take you, use you as leverage. Some might even try to seduce you away, turn you into a weapon against him. Min-seo's voice was matter of fact. Your life as you knew it is over. You're a target now. A weakness. A vulnerability in armor that's never had one before. Keisha felt cold despite the warm cafe. Why are you telling me this? Because I need to know if you're going to run. If you're going to break my brother's heart and make him vulnerable at the worst possible time. Or if you're going to stay and be strong enough to survive what's coming. What's coming? Minseo looked at Seok-won. You haven't told her? About the consolidation? The families moving against you? I was going to… When? After they made their move? Minseo's eyes flashed with anger. You're so busy playing house with your childhood sweetheart that you're missing the war building around you. Park wasn't working alone. He was part of a coalition. 5 families, pooling resources, planning a coordinated strike against your operations. She pulled out a folder, spreading documents across the table. They've been planning this for months. Park was supposed to destabilize you emotionally, and he succeeded. Now you're distracted, focused on her instead of business. The other 4 families are moving into position. They're going to hit you from all sides simultaneously. Seok-won's expression was stone. When? Within the week? Maybe sooner if they think you're too distracted to notice. Minseo looked at Keisha. So, you see why this matters? Why I need to know if you're going to stay or run. Because if you stay, you need to be prepared for what that means. Keisha's mind was reeling. 5 families planning to attack Seok-won. Because of her. Because he'd let his guard down. I'm not running, she heard herself say. Minseo raised an eyebrow. You say that now, but when the shooting starts? When people die because of you? When you watch him do terrible things to protect you? I'm not running. Keisha's voice was firm. I love him. And I'm not going to abandon him because things get dangerous. Love. Minseo said the word like it was foreign. Our father taught us that love was weakness, that caring about someone gave them power over you, that the only way to survive was to need no one. Your father was wrong, Keisha said. Love isn't weakness. It's strength. It's having someone worth fighting for, someone worth protecting. Pretty words. Let's see if you still believe them when this is over. Minseo stood. I'll send you the complete intelligence on the families. Names, territories, known associates. You'll need it. Why are you helping? Seok-won asked. Because you're my brother. And despite everything father did to pit us against each other, despite the years of distance, you're still family. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. And because I'm curious to see if she really is strong enough to survive loving you. Minseo started to leave, then paused. One more thing. The families aren't just targeting you. They're targeting her. They've already made moves, approaching her roommate with money, trying to find leverage, looking for weaknesses to exploit. She looked directly at Keisha. They know you're the key to destroying him, and they're going to try everything to use you. So either get very strong very fast, or get out now before people die because you weren't ready for this world. Then she was gone, leaving Keisha and Seok-won sitting in silence. I'm sorry, Seok-won said finally. I should have told you. About the families, about the danger you'd be in. I was selfish, wanting to keep you close without fully preparing you for what that meant. Are you asking me to leave? God, no. I'm asking you to forgive me for putting you in danger. For being too blinded by wanting you to properly protect you. Keisha took his face in her hands. Stop apologizing for loving me. Stop treating it like it's a weakness. Minseo is wrong, and so is your father. Love isn't what makes you weak. It's what makes you human. Humans are easier to kill than monsters. Maybe. But monsters are easier to become. And I'd rather have you human and vulnerable than completely closed off and alone. He pulled her close, holding her tight. 5 families are coming for us. They're going to try to kill you, use you, destroy everything we're building. Are you sure you want to stay for that? I'm sure I want to stay for you. The rest we'll figure out together. Seok-won kissed her, deep and desperate. Then we need to prepare. You need to learn to protect yourself, to shoot, to fight, to survive if something happens to me. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that, but I know this. I won't let them take you. I won't let them use you against me, even if it means sending you away to keep you safe. You send me away and I'll just come back. You're stuck with me, Seok-won. Better get used to it. He smiled despite the gravity of the situation. Stubborn woman. You love it. I love you, all of you, including the stubborn parts that are going to drive me insane. They left the cafe hand in hand, Young-ho falling into step behind them. As they walked to the car, Keisha noticed the subtle changes. More security, watching from different vantage points. Min-seo's warning had already put Seok-won into protection mode. What happens now? She asked as they drove through Manhattan. Now I prepare for war, and you prepare to survive it. His hand found hers. I need you to trust me, to follow my lead when things get dangerous. Can you do that? Yes. Even if it means doing things you never thought you'd do. Even if it means watching me become the monster Min-seo described? Keisha looked at him. This man who'd been a scared child, who'd become powerful and dangerous, who loved her with an intensity that should terrify her, but instead felt like coming home. I told you before, I see who you are. The violence, the ruthlessness, all of it. And I'm choosing to stay anyway. She brought his hand to her lips. So stop trying to scare me away. It's not going to work. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. She smiled. But I'm yours. And that's not changing. Not for 5 families, not for your sister's warnings. Not for anything. Seok-won pulled the car over suddenly, turning to cup her face. I love you. More than I thought I could love anything. And I'm going to keep you safe. No matter what it costs. I know. And I'm going to help you. We're partners now. In everything. He kissed her, and in that kiss was a promise that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Because love wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing either of them had ever known. The next 3 days were a crash course in Seok-won's world. Not the violence, though Keisha was learning to shoot at a private range, her hands steadying with each session. Not the business, though she sat in on meetings, learning the language of territory and influence and strategic positioning. No, what she learned most was how completely Seok-won consumed everything he focused on. And right now, he was focused on her. Again, he said, standing behind her at the range, his body pressed against hers as he adjusted her grip on the gun. Breathe out slowly, then squeeze. Keisha fired, the shot hitting closer to center this time. Better? Much better. His lips found her neck, just below her ear. You're a quick learner. I'm motivated. She set down the gun, turning in his arms. The sooner I learn this, the sooner we can get back to more interesting activities. Is that right? His hand slid down to her hips. And what activities did you have in mind? The kind that involves significantly less clothing and much better use of your hands. Seok-won's eyes darkened. We're supposed to be training. We've been training for 3 hours. I think I've earned a break. Have you? He lifted her onto the counter beside the range, stepping between her legs. And what kind of break are you requesting? The kind where you stop being my instructor and go back to being the man who can't keep his hands off me. Those aren't mutually exclusive. His mouth found hers, the kiss deep and claiming. I can teach you to protect yourself and still want you constantly. In fact, watching you handle a weapon is surprisingly attractive. Everything about me is attractive to you. You're biased. Completely biased. Utterly compromised. Absolutely gone for you. He pulled back to look at her. 3 days, Keisha. I've had you in my life, in my home, in my bed for 3 days, and I can't imagine going back to before. Good thing you don't have to. Good thing. His hand slid up her thighs, bunching the fabric of her dress. Though I should mention, if we do this here, Young-ho is going to be very uncomfortable when he comes to check on us. Then we should probably relocate. Probably. But he made no move to step back, his fingers tracing patterns on her inner thighs. Or we could just be quiet. I'm not good at being quiet with you. I know. I love that about you. He kissed her again, slower this time. The way you say my name. The sounds you make when I touch you right here. Keisha gasped as his fingers found exactly the right spot. That's cheating. Is it working? You know it is. Good. He lifted her and she wrapped her legs around his waist automatically. Because I've spent 3 days being professional and controlled, and I'm done pretending I can think about anything other than you. He carried her to the private lounge attached to the range, because of course his shooting range had a luxury lounge, and kicked the door shut behind them. The couch was leather and expensive, and Keisha didn't care about any of it. All she cared about was the way Seok-won looked at her, like she was air and water and everything necessary for survival, like she was his. I love you, he said, settling her on the couch and following her down. I know I say it constantly, but I need you to hear it. Need you to know that this isn't just attraction or obsession or anything temporary. This is everything. I know. Keisha pulled him closer. I love you too, even when you're being overprotective and controlling and slightly insane. Only slightly? I'm being generous. He laughed against her mouth, and the sound was beautiful. Keisha had discovered over the past 3 days that she could make him laugh. Really laugh, not the cold humor he used with business associates, but genuine amusement and joy. It felt like a superpower. Tell me what you want, Seok-won murmured, his hands mapping her body with familiar possession. Tell me how you want this. I want you. Just you. Always you. You have me. You've had me since we were children. You'll have me until I stop breathing. That's very dramatic. I'm a dramatic person. You'll get used to it. I'm counting on it. They came together with the urgency of 3 days spent being professional when all they wanted was this. Skin against skin, or breath mingling, the world narrowing to just the two of them. Later, wrapped in Seok-won's arms on the ridiculously expensive couch, Keisha felt more at peace than she had in days. We should probably get back, she murmured. You have that meeting with the shipping contacts. They can wait. Can they? For you? Yes. Everything can wait. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. I'm delegating more to Young-ho anyway. He's perfectly capable of handling day-to-day operations. And what will you be doing instead? Focusing on you. On us. On building the life we talked about. He tilted her face up. I meant what I said. About marriage. About making you mine in every way that matters. We've known each other as adults for less than a week. We've known each other for 23 years. The adult part is just a formality. His expression was serious. I want to marry you, Keisha. I want the world to know you're mine. Want the legal protections, the official claim, everything. Is this a proposal? Not yet. When I propose, you'll know. It'll be grand and romantic and completely over the top. His smile was soft. But I'm giving you warning. I'm going to ask. Soon. And I'm going to keep asking until you say yes. What if I say no? You won't. Confident. Realistic. You love me, I love you. We're building something real. Marriage is the next logical step. Logical? Keisha laughed. There's nothing logical about any of this. Maybe not, but it's right. You feel it too. She did. Despite the speed, Despite the insanity, despite everything that said this was too much too fast, it felt right. I'm not saying yes yet, she warned. But you're not saying no. I'm saying ask me properly and we'll see. Challenge accepted. He pulled her closer. I'm going to make it impossible for you to refuse. Candlelight and music and the perfect moment. You'll cry, I'll probably cry, and then you'll say yes and let me put a ring on your finger that costs more than most people's houses. You're very sure of yourself. When it comes to you? Always. Her phone buzzed, a message from Sarah. Please tell me you're still alive and he hasn't murdered you and stolen your identity. Keisha laughed, showing Seok-won the message. I should probably check in with her. She's been worried. Invite her to dinner. Tonight. Here. Seok-won sat up, pulling Keisha with him. I want to meet the people who matter to you. I want them to see that I'm serious about this. You want to have dinner with my roommate? Former roommate. And yes, she's important to you, which makes her important to me. He started gathering their scattered clothes. Besides, if I'm going to convince you to marry me, I need your friends on my side. Sarah is going to grill you mercilessly. Good. Let her. I have nothing to hide from her. He helped Keisha dress, his hands lingering in ways that suggested round 2 wasn't far off. Well, nothing she needs to know about. The illegal empire can stay vague. Keisha sent the invitation, and Sarah responded immediately. OMG, yes. I need to meet this man who swept you off your feet. Also, I want to see this penthouse you keep describing. 7 p.m.? 7 works, Keisha confirmed. The rest of the day was spent preparing. Or rather, Seok-won preparing while Keisha watched in amusement as he stressed about making the right impression. You run a criminal organization, she pointed out. You've negotiated with dangerous people and come out on top. Why are you nervous about dinner with a grad student? Because she matters to you. If she doesn't approve, if she thinks I'm wrong for you, it'll hurt you. And I can't stand the thought of hurting you. The honesty in his voice made Keisha's chest tight. She's going to love you. How could she not? Easy. I'm a criminal who's dragged you into a dangerous world. I'm older than you, richer than you, and I basically kidnapped you from your normal life. You didn't kidnap me. I chose this. Did you? Or did I just make it impossible to say no? Keisha crossed to him, taking his face in her hands. Stop. You're spiraling. Sarah is going to see what I see. A man who loves me, who protects me, who makes me happier than I've ever been. The rest is just details. Details that could get you killed. Details that make life interesting. She kissed him softly. Now stop panicking and help me decide what to wear. I want to look good tonight. You always look good. Sweet talker. By 7, the penthouse was ready. Seok-won had arranged for catering, Korean and American fusion that smelled incredible. Candles were lit, wine was chilling, and Keisha wore a dress that made Seok-won's eyes darken with appreciation every time he looked at her. When Sarah arrived, her jaw dropped. Holy shit, this is where you're living now? Temporarily, Keisha said, pulling her friend into a hug. Until we figure out what's next. What's next is probably a palace in Seoul, knowing your boyfriend. Sarah looked past Keisha to where Seok-won stood. You must be the famous Seok-won. I'm Sarah, the best friend who will absolutely murder you if you hurt her. Fair warning. Seok-won extended his hand. I'm Seok-won, the man who's completely in love with your best friend and has no intention of ever hurting her. Sarah shook his hand, studying him with sharp eyes. You're smooth, I'll give you that. Also terrifyingly good-looking. Keisha undersold that part. I described him accurately. Keisha protested. You said attractive. This is Greek god-level attractive. There's a difference. Seok-won smiled, genuine amusement in his expression. I like her. She's honest. Brutally so, Sarah confirmed. It's one of my best qualities. Also one of my worst, depending on who you ask. Dinner was easier than Keisha expected. Sarah asked pointed questions about Seok-won's intentions, his business, his plans for the future. But she did it with humor and warmth. And Seok-won, to his credit, was charming without being slick, honest without revealing too much. So, Sarah said over dessert, Keisha tells me you two knew each other as kids. That's some serious fate-level coincidence, meeting again after all these years. I don't believe in fate, Seok-won said. I believe in determination. I searched for her for years. When I finally found her, I wasn't letting her go. That's either really romantic or really creepy, depending on the delivery. Luckily for you, you nailed the romantic angle. I try. Sarah looked between them, her expression softening. You really love her, don't you? This isn't some rich guy playing with the pretty waitress. I really love her, Seok-won said simply. More than I thought I could love anything. She's the reason I survived my childhood. She's the reason I kept searching even when it seemed hopeless. And she's the reason I want to be better than I am. Okay, that's disgustingly sweet. Sarah wiped at her eyes. I'm not crying. You're crying. We're all crying, Keisha said, her own eyes wet. Group crying session. Excellent. Sarah raised her wine glass. To Keisha and Seok-won, may you have a lifetime of happiness and romance novel levels of drama. They clinked glasses, and Keisha felt something settle in her chest. Sarah approved. Her chosen family accepted the choice she'd made. After dinner, Sarah pulled Keisha aside while Seok-won took a phone call in his office. Okay, real talk, Sarah said. Are you sure about this? About him? Because once you're all the way in this world, getting out is going to be hard. I'm sure, more sure than I've been about anything. Even knowing he's not exactly legitimate in his business dealings? Even knowing that. Sarah, he makes me feel alive. He makes me feel cherished. When I'm with him, I'm not just surviving, I'm living. Then I'm happy for you. Truly. Sarah hugged her. But if he ever hurts you, I'm coming after him with everything I have. Best friend privileges. Deal. Though you should know he'd probably let you. He's weirdly honorable about things like that. They rejoined Seok-won, who looked troubled. Everything okay? Keisha asked. Min Seo sent the intelligence on the 5 families. It's extensive and troubling. How troubling? They're moving faster than expected. Young Ho intercepted communications suggesting they're planning to strike within 48 hours. Sarah looked between them. I feel like I'm missing important context here. Business complications. Seok-won said smoothly. Nothing you need to worry about. Business complications that involve strikes and timelines? That sounds like mob stuff. Are you in the mob? Sarah, Keisha started. Because if you're in the mob, I need to know. For safety reasons. And also because that's incredibly cool and terrifying in equal measure. Seok-won looked at Keisha, a silent question. She nodded. If Sarah was going to be in her life, she deserved honesty. I run a criminal organization, Seok-won said calmly. Primarily based in Seoul, with expanding operations in the US. It's dangerous, often violent, and completely illegal. Keisha knows all this and has chosen to stay anyway. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Okay, that's a lot. But also kind of badass. She looked at Keisha. You're dating a crime boss. That's actually happening. I'm in love with a crime boss, Keisha corrected. There's a difference. A significant one, Seok-won added. And Sarah, I need you to understand. Being associated with Keisha means you're potentially at risk. My enemies might try to use you as leverage. I've already assigned security to watch your building, but you need to be careful. Security? Like bodyguards? like trained professionals who will keep you safe, whether you know they're there or not. Sarah processed this, then shrugged. Honestly, after the month I've had writing my thesis, having people make sure I don't get murdered sounds kind of nice. Plus, bodyguards. That's some movie star treatment. You're taking this very well, Keisha said. What else am I going to do? You're my best friend. You love him. He's clearly obsessed with you in a way that's both concerning and romantic. And he's hot and rich and willing to protect me from his enemies. That's basically a romance novel come to life. You're insane, says the woman who fell in love with a crime boss in less than a week. I'm just along for the ride. Seok-won smiled despite the tension. I like you more and more, Sarah. Everyone does. It's my charm. She stood. I should probably go. You two have mob stuff to handle, and I have a thesis chapter due Friday. I'll have Young-ho drive you home, Seok-won said. And Sarah? Thank you. For being there for Keisha, for accepting this situation. It means more than you know. Just take care of her. That's all I ask. After Sarah left, Keisha curled into Seok-won's side on the couch. That went better than expected. Your friend is remarkable, adaptable and loyal. She's the best. Keisha looked up at him. So, 48 hours until these families make their move? Possibly less, which means I need to be strategic. Need to move first, hit them where they're vulnerable before they can coordinate their attack. What can I do? Stay safe. Let me protect you. That's not enough. I want to help. Keisha, I'm not some damsel who needs to be locked away while you fight battles. I'm your partner. You're equal. Let me help. Seok-won looked at her for a long moment. You really mean that? Yes. Tell me how I can help. All right, but you follow my lead. You don't take unnecessary risks. And if things go bad, you run. Agreed? Agreed. Then here's what we're going to do. They spent the next hours planning. Seok-won explained the families, their territories, their weaknesses, their known associates. Min-seo had provided detailed intelligence, and together they began formulating a strategy. Not to wait for the attack, but to prevent it entirely. The key is the leader, Seok-won explained, pointing to a photo of a man in his 60s. Viktor Petrov. He's the one who organized the coalition. If we remove him, the alliance falls apart. Remove him how? Not kill. That would start an actual war. But discredit him. Make the other families lose faith in his leadership. How do we do that? Seok-won smiled, and it was sharp and dangerous. We expose his secrets. Victor has been skimming from the coalition's pooled resources, pocketing money meant for the collective operation. If the other families find out, they'll turn on him. Exactly. And without his leadership, the coalition crumbles. The families go back to their individual operations, and the coordinated threat disappears. You already have proof of his stealing? Min-seo does. She's been gathering intelligence for months. She just needed a reason to use it. And what's her reason? Me. Family loyalty, however complicated our relationship is. He pulled Keisha closer. But I need to deliver the information carefully. Make it look like the other families discovered it themselves, not like I'm manipulating them. That's incredibly Machiavellian. That's survival in my world. The best victories are the ones where your enemies destroy themselves. They worked late into the night, refining the plan. Keisha found herself impressed by Seok-won's strategic mind. The way he anticipated reactions, planned for contingencies, saw the chessboard several moves ahead. This was who he'd been trained to be. This was the heir his father had molded. But when he looked at her, when his hand found hers, when he pulled her close and buried his face in her hair, that was the boy from the orphanage. The one who'd needed her songs to chase away nightmares. Both versions existed in the same person. And Keisha loved them both. Come to bed, she said finally, when they'd refined the plan as much as they could. You need rest. I need you. He stood, pulling her up with him. I need to feel you close. I need to remember what I'm fighting for. You're fighting for your empire. I'm fighting for you. The empire is just what funds our life together. In bed, wrapped in expensive sheets in Seok-won's arms, Keisha felt safe despite knowing danger was coming. Because he would protect her. Would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you too. More than anything. More than my empire. My reputation. My life. His arms tightened. You're everything, Keisha. My reason for all of this. That's a lot of pressure. You can handle it. You're the strongest person I know. I'm a waitress who quit her job less than a week ago. You're a woman who survived the foster system, who protected a scared child when you were just a child yourself, who's adapted to my world without breaking. You're incredible. Keep talking like that, and I'm going to think you actually like me. Like is inadequate. I'm obsessed with you. Completely consumed. You've taken over my entire existence. Is that healthy? Probably not, but I don't care. He rolled over, pinning her beneath him. I'm going to marry you, Keisha. I'm going to make you mine in every way that matters. And then I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. I could never regret you. You say that now. Wait until you've dealt with my controlling tendencies for a few years. I'm already dealing with them. You literally have people following me everywhere. For your safety. For your peace of mind. That too. He kissed her softly. But you love it. Admit it. I love you. The protection is just a side effect I'm learning to live with. Close enough. They made love slowly, tenderly, the urgency of earlier replaced by something deeper. A claiming that was also a promise. A connection that went beyond physical to something that felt spiritual. Afterwards, Keisha lay in Seok-won's arms and thought about how her life had changed. A week ago, she was struggling to make rent. Now she was planning Mafia strategy with a man who wanted to marry her. It was insane. It was perfect. It was everything she never knew she wanted. The next day, Seok-won put his plan into motion. He sent the information about Victor's theft to carefully selected sources. People who would spread it to the right ears without revealing where it came from. Within hours, the coalition was fracturing. Keisha watched from Seok-won's office as reports came in. Victor desperately trying to deny the accusations. The other families demanding explanations. The alliance crumbling in real time. It's working, she said, watching Seok-won coordinate his people with practiced ease. It's working because Minseo's intelligence was solid, because I chose the right channels for distribution, because Victor is exactly as predictable as I thought he'd be. He pulled up another screen. 2 families have already pulled out of the coalition. A third is wavering. By tomorrow, the threat will be neutralized. Just like that? Just like that. The key to winning wars is making sure they never actually happen. Fighting is messy, expensive, and unpredictable. But manipulation? That's clean, efficient, effective. You're scary when you're strategic. I'm always strategic. You're just seeing it applied to something other than winning you over. You already won me over. I know. Best victory of my life. He stood, pulling her into his arms. It's almost over, Keisha. The threat is dissolving. Soon we can focus on just being together instead of constantly preparing for attack. And then what? Then I ask you properly to marry me. Then we plan a wedding that will make every society page in 3 countries. Then we build the life we want. Here, Seoul. Anywhere you choose. That's very organized for someone who claims to be spontaneous in his declarations of love. I'm spontaneous about feelings, strategic about execution. His hands framed her face. I know exactly what I want our future to look like. You, me, whatever family we decide to build. A life where you're safe and happy and loved beyond measure. You've thought about this. Constantly. Obsessively. It's all I think about. Keisha's phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. Just got flowers delivered to my apartment. The card says, "Thank you for supporting Keisha. SK. Did your boyfriend just send me flowers?" She showed Seok-won the message. You sent Sarah flowers? She's important to you. I wanted to thank her for accepting our relationship, for being there for you. Was that wrong? It was sweet. Unnecessary, but sweet. Nothing that makes you happy is unnecessary. Keisha typed back to Sarah. Yes, he's that extra. Get used to it. Sarah's response. I love him. When's the wedding? Can I be maid of honor? There's no wedding yet, Keisha replied. Yet. That's very telling. Shut up. Never. This is too fun. Seok-won read over her shoulder, laughing. I like that she's already planning our wedding. Don't encourage her. Too late. I'm texting her separately to discuss plans. You don't have her number. I have everyone's number. I'm very thorough in my research. He pulled out his phone, already typing. Sarah needs to be involved in the proposal, too. She'll appreciate being included. You're actually planning the proposal with my best friend? I'm planning the proposal with everyone who matters to you. I want it to be perfect. Want you to say yes without hesitation. I'm going to say yes anyway. The words were out before Keisha could stop them. Seok-won froze, his eyes meeting hers. What did you say? I said I'm going to say yes. Whenever you ask. However you ask. And the answer is yes. Keisha. I love you. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. So stop planning the perfect proposal and just ask me. I can't. I need it to be special. You are what's special. The proposal can be you asking me right now in your office wearing a business suit and looking stressed about Mafia politics. I don't care about grand gestures. I care about you. Seok-won set down his phone slowly. You're serious. Completely serious. You want me to propose right now? No ring, no planning, no romantic setting? I want you to ask me to marry you. The rest is just decoration. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he sank to one knee, taking her hands in his. Keisha Thompson. I loved you when I was 9, and you were the only light in my darkness. I loved you through 23 years of searching. And I love you now, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You make me want to be better. You make me feel human. You make everything in my life make sense. His voice was rough with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of you? Keisha dropped to her knees in front of him, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. I love you, and yes. He kissed her, deep and claiming, and Keisha felt something slot into place. This was right. This was inevitable. This was always how their story was meant to end, with them choosing each other, completely and irrevocably. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Seok-won pressed his forehead to hers. I'm buying you a ring. The biggest, most expensive ring I can find. I need to give it to you. Need everyone to see that you're mine, that you chose me. Let me do this. Okay, buy me an obscenely expensive ring. Thank you. He pulled her close. We're getting married. We're getting married, Keisha repeated, the reality of it hitting her. Oh my God, we're getting married. Having second thoughts? Not even a little bit. Just processing that I'm engaged to a man I've known as an adult for less than a week. 23 years, Seok-won corrected. We've known each other for 23 years. This is just the part where we make it official. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting to something satisfied. Victor just withdrew from the coalition completely. He's fleeing to Moscow. The other families are scrambling to distance themselves from him. So it's over? It's over. The threat is neutralized. We're safe. We're safe and engaged. Best day of my life. He stood, pulling her up with him. We should celebrate. Champagne, dinner, something to mark the occasion. Or we could just go to bed and celebrate privately. I like the way you think. They made it halfway to the bedroom before Seok-won's phone rang again. He glanced at it, groaning. It's Minseo. I have to take this. Take it. I'll wait. He answered, switching to Korean. Keisha watched his expression shift. Surprise, then something that looked like reluctant affection. When he hung up, he was smiling. Minseo congratulates us on our engagement. How does she know? We literally just decided. She has the penthouse under surveillance. Has for days, apparently. That's disturbing. That's Minseo. But she says she approves. Says you're good for me. Coming from her, that's high praise. Should I be flattered or concerned? Both. Always both with my sister. He pulled Keisha close again. But she's right. You are good for me. The best thing that's ever happened to me. I love you. I love you too. My fiancé. The word sent a thrill through Keisha. Fiancé. She was engaged to Kang Seok-won. Was going to marry him. Build a life with him. Face whatever came next together. It was crazy and reckless and absolutely perfect. 3 months later, Keisha stood in front of a mirror in a suite at the plaza, wearing a wedding dress that cost more than her entire year's salary used to. Sarah fussed with the train while Carol, who'd been tearfully happy about the engagement, adjusted her veil. You look like a princess, Sarah said. A really expensive Mafia-adjacent princess. That's the aesthetic we're going for, Keisha replied, her heart hammering. In an hour, she'd marry Seok-won in front of 300 people from both their worlds. It should terrify her. Instead, she just wanted it to start. A knock on the door. Minseo entered, looking elegant in a dark blue dress. Everyone out. I need a moment with the bride. Sarah and Carol exchanged glances but obeyed. When they were alone, Minseo studied Keisha with those sharp eyes. You're really doing this? I really am. You could still run. I'd help you disappear if you wanted. I don't want to run. I want to marry your brother. Minseo's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Good. Because he's been insufferable for 3 months, constantly planning and stressing about making this perfect for you. It's already perfect. He's here, I'm here. That's all that matters. That's disgustingly sweet. Minseo reached into her clutch, pulling out a small box. This was our mother's. I want you to have it. Inside was a delicate bracelet, platinum with small diamonds. Minseo, I can't. You can. You're family now. And family takes care of each other. She helped Keisha fasten it. Welcome to the Kang family. It's complicated and often dangerous, but we protect our own. Thank you. Minseo nodded, then headed for the door. She paused, looking back. He loves you more than he's ever loved anything. Don't make him regret it. I won't. When Minseo left, Keisha touched the bracelet, feeling the weight of it. Family. She had family now. Not just Carol and Sarah, but Seok-won and Minseo and the entire complicated empire they came from. The door opened again. Sarah peeked in. Ready? It's time. I'm ready. The ceremony was beautiful. Traditional Korean elements mixed with Western touches, flowers everywhere, music that made her cry. But Keisha barely noticed any of it. All she saw was Seok-won, standing at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. When she reached him, he took her hands, his eyes suspiciously wet. You're beautiful, he whispered. absolutely perfect. So are you. The ceremony was a blur, vows spoken in Korean and English, rings exchanged. Hers, the obscenely large diamond he'd promised. His, a simple platinum band she'd chosen. Promises made in front of everyone who mattered. And then the words she'd been waiting for. You may kiss your bride. Seok-won pulled her close, and the kiss was soft and claiming and absolutely perfect. The crowd erupted in applause, but Keisha barely heard it. All that mattered was this moment. This man. This life they were starting together. I love you, Seok-won murmured against her lips. My wife. I love you too. My husband. They pulled apart, turning to face their guests. Friends, family, business associates from both their worlds. Sarah was crying openly. Carol was dabbing at her eyes. Minseo actually smiled, genuine and warm. Ready to face our future? Seok-won asked. With you? Always. They walked down the aisle hand in hand, and Keisha felt nothing but joy. Yes, their life would be complicated. Yes, danger would always lurk. Yes, they'd face challenges she couldn't even imagine yet. But they'd face them together. The boy who'd promised to protect her had grown into a man determined to keep that promise. And the girl who'd sung away his nightmares had grown into a woman ready to build a life with him. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. And as they stepped into the reception, into their new life as husband and wife, Keisha touched the silver necklace she still wore beneath her designer dress. The crude piece of metal carved by a 9-year-old with bleeding fingers and desperate hope. Some promises, she'd learned, were worth keeping forever, even if it took 23 years to fulfill them. Especially then.